All right, good evening. The time is 5:01 p.m. It is January 16th, 2024, the first board meeting of 2024, the first board meeting starting at 5 p.m. at our new scheduled time. Same great people here. At this time, we'll determine if a quorum is present.
Leona McDade, present.
Josh Western, present. Richie Deffenbaugh, present.
Leanne Artho, present.
Matt Slayton, present.
Craig Hawksworth, present.
I, Sam Slayton, present. We do have a quorum established. The time is still 5:01 p.m. and we will adjourn to executive session. right, good evening. The time is 6:01 p.m. We have returned from executive session. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve items discussed in closed session.
So moved.
Mr. Hawksworth, motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Dr. McDade, second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. And now we will have the Pledge of Allegiance from Argyle Middle School.
Yeah. Have them introduce themselves? Yeah.
My name is Caden Johnson. I'm in 8th grade. I am the president of NJHS, and one thing I like about being an Eagle is that we have a good FCA group.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Hi, I'm Madison Chapman. I am in 8th grade and secretary of NJHS. One thing I love about being an Eagle is all of the electives we get to choose from, including STEM and Spanish.
Wonderful.
Hello, my name is Eli Roskilly. I am in 8th grade and I am a fellowship ambassador for NJHS. What I like about being an Eagle is our theater department and cross-country team. Thank you.
Excellent.
Hello, my name is Kayla Hong. I'm in 8th grade. I am a fellowship ambassador for NJHS. And something I like about being an Eagle is all the kind teachers and staff.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you for coming.
All right, this time we'll have a brief moment of silence. All right, thank you. Before we get started, I'm going to go off script and just say happy birthday to Mr. Rick Herron. We appreciate you. Thanks for being here on your birthday.
Yes.
Do
Only
you,
way to celebrate, isn't it, right?
do you want us to take your picture?
We can take your picture. Yeah. That's right. Okay, it's my turn.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I have the opportunity and privilege tonight to do a special recognition. As you may or may not know, January is School Board Appreciation Month across the state of Texas. And all of these amazing people sitting up here serve this community. And it's a volunteer position, but they face a lot of strong responsibilities in this district, taking care of students, taking care of teachers, and making sure that you have the most amazing learning environment possible. So we're very, very blessed by our trustees. And so I want to take just a moment to read the state. First of all, Governor Abbott has declared state of Texas, or in the state of Texas, this is School Board Appreciation Month. But I want to read a proclamation from us as the district, recognizing our trustees and for appreciation. So whereas the mission of public schools is to meet the educational needs of all children and to empower them to become competent, productive contributors to a democratic society in an ever-changing world, and whereas a local school board and their members are elected by their community members to do what's best for students, and whereas local school board members work closely with parents, educational professionals, and other community members to create the educational vision we want for our students, and whereas local school board members are responsible for ensuring the structure that provides a solid foundation for our school system, and whereas local school board members are strong advocates for public education and are responsible for communicating the needs of the school district to the public and the public's expectations to the district. Now, therefore, I, Courtney Carpenter, Superintendent, do hereby declare my appreciation for the members of the Argyle School Board and proclaim January 2024 as School Board Appreciation and Recognition Month in Argyle, Texas. I urge all of our citizens to join me in recognizing the dedication and hard work of our local board members and in working with them to mold an education system that meets the needs of both today's and tomorrow's children. So to all of our trustees, on behalf of the district and community, thank you for what you do. But I also want to point out some amazing artwork. And so if you'll notice here on the front, our elementary friends across the district have drawn special portraits of each trustee. We picked one to frame, but they have several that they can choose from if they want to switch their frame out. But thank you to our friends at West and South and Hilltop for helping us out, and then also to our middle schools and high schools and the 6th grade center for our banners. Very nice job. We appreciate that. And then we just want to say thank you to each of you, because I know I require a lot of your time, and so you're always so gracious to work with us, and just from the bottom of our hearts, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
So we can get a picture. Yeah, let's do a picture.
With our pictures?
We should get a photo
Yes,
with
you
our
should
pictures.
take your portrait. Please take your portrait.
Sorry.
Whichever portrait you choose.
I'll choose mine. Doing our pictures.
Yes, hold your portrait.
I thought that was me.
Put me back up. Okay.
I know.
All right, we're going to move into the public forum comments section of the meeting. We have 2 people signed up this evening. First, Miss Leslie Hildebrandt.
Hello.
Good evening. I'm going to read you some rules of the road real quick.
Okay.
So, you're going to have 5 minutes to speak tonight. The board cannot ask questions, make comments, and when you have 1 minute left, Mr. Slayton's going to let you know. You have 1 minute left. You got this nice timer up here, so whenever you'd like to begin, we're glad you're here.
All
Go
right.
right ahead.
Thank you all very much. So my name is Leslie Hildebrandt. I had a daughter graduate from Argyle High School last year. And based off of that process and knowing we've got another freshman coming up, we learned some interesting things that we didn't know when you put your first kid through college application processes. So based on that, I wrote a little thing. We all know the cost of college degrees are rising and very expensive, as well as there is increased competition on acceptance. I'd like to propose a change to a current practice that could benefit 90% of high school students without any change or impact to the other 10%. This would be changing how class rank is listed on the transcripts of juniors and seniors. Currently, it's listed as quartiles. So when you look on the bottom of their transcript, it says their GPA and then their class rank quartile. So second quartile, third, fourth, or if they're in the top 10%, that is listed as top 10%. With universities having less administrative and admissions people and they use algorithms, many universities are now accepting applications based on class rank versus GPA or looking at their course loads. There are other school districts that have made this change, including Eames, Austin, Leander, Lake Travis, Frisco, Plano, Northeast ISD, which is in San Antonio, Friendswood, it goes on. I have a list of those that I can provide if needed. Right now, I would like to tell the story of 2 students. We're going to name them Janie and Johnny. Johnny is related to me. Janie is related to me. One is in Argyle ISD and one is in Frisco ISD last year. Their GPAs were 3.73 and 3.72 consecutively. The Argyle ISD student had a dual credit of 18 hours, the other 3 hours. Their ranks were listed as third quartile for the Argyle ISD student, first quartile for the Frisco student. When both of those same almost identical students on transcripts applied to Texas Tech University last year, the Frisco student with a higher class rank got $12,500 in scholarships offered per semester for a total of $50,000 total over all 4 years, whereas the Argyle student got 0. just based on class rank. Which one's a better student with a 3.72 and a 3.73 and more honors classes, more dual credit, less dual credit? It's hard to say. So being in a high performance district sometimes can hurt these students that aren't in the top 10%. There are other universities that give scholarships based on class rank. I looked these up. It's University of Texas. This is just in Texas A&M, University of Houston, UNT, Texas Tech, UTSA, UTEP, and others. So what I would like, how this would work is top 10%, leave it on their transcript. They're in the top 10%, they earned it. Let them get all the benefits of having their top 10%. All I'm saying is for those other students in the lower 90%, leave the transcript blank. This forces the universities upon application to look at their GPA and their course load and accept them or give them scholarships based upon that versus just simply the easy algorithm and elimination of class rank. So that's it. I'd like to call this my blank rank proposition. And again, it would help 90% of your students. It wouldn't hurt the other 10%, so it's a win-win for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Mrs. Sella Spiegelberg, you're next. Good evening. You know the rules.
I do.
Time to go. There you go.
Hi. So I know that we're going to be discussing the Bond Growth and Planning Committee today. And I had some thoughts on something that you guys should consider while you are figuring out what to do with the information from that. And that is that right now we are facing certain budget issues. I heard recently that one of the teachers at, I don't recall which school exactly, but they got a donation from a parent because there was a quota on how many copies they could make per month. And they had already received that, so they needed money to make additional copies for something for the classroom. And next month, if the state does not come through with funding, additional funding for the schools, we're gonna be making additional cuts to the budget. We're going to be rearranging how the teachers work, their workload, possibly even cutting things like planning periods so that they have an extra period to teach, etc. At the same time, some of them also are receiving less money in their paycheck because of the increase in the cost for medical benefits. And this is not just happening to teachers, it's also happening to parents and families in this district, where they're trying to figure out how to manage increased costs of everything while still managing to maintain a certain level of lifestyle for themselves and their kids. So when you're looking at future bond growth, I want you to really keep in mind how much you're going to put into this bond, how big you're going to make it, and make sure that you are including things that are needed, like capacity, over extras at this time, because I think it wouldn't look good to say, hey, this is a want and it's really awesome and we should totally put it in here, but our teachers are going to lose their planning period, or parents are going to have to pay more to go see their kids' games, etc., right? At a time when it's difficult for everybody across the board. So I want you to keep that in mind as you're going through this process, because I do know that we need a bond, we need it to pass, and you should be taking all of those things into account because the optics will not look good otherwise. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to the consent agenda. I have January 2024 donations. From AABC, $4,000 to workout equipment, all sports, pull sleds, harnesses, and speed bands. From Brian and Miranda Crow, Maverick Development Group, $998 for Samsung side-by-side refrigerator at Hilltop Elementary. The Dang family, $200. Argyle South Elementary, staff snack and goodie cart. Total January donations, $5,198. Does anyone have any questions on any of the consent items? All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent items as presented.
Motion to approve.
Mr. Westrom, motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Matthew Slayton with second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you.
Okay, I think we are ready for, okay,
Yep.
excellent. So as our facilitator, Dr. Lizzie Johnson, begins to make her way up here and our committee, I just want to take just a few moments to reiterate our appreciation for our 50-member community and staff and student-led bond and growth planning committee. This process has been incredible. These community staff members and our students have been warriors over the last several months. They've had a lot of hard discussions that they've had to be a part of. I think one of the hardest things you're in a fast growth community is sometimes when you find out there's different information you've got to bring back to them. And that happened to them just this last week. When we met in meeting 6, we had to come to them and talk about the new application for the development just to the south of our property right here that's on the Town of Flower Mound's website. And it's a residential. And so that was some information that sparked up after the Christmas holidays that we had to bring to them and let them chew on and consider during that process last Wednesday night as they were finalizing this project, the project recommendations. So I can't thank them enough. We've got a few of them here. If you're in the audience and you start on this committee, would you please stand up for just a moment? I know some of our committee members are here. Thank you so much for your time. I also want to thank our campus principals. I want to thank Nicole Leach is here as well, assistant principal at Argyle High School. They facilitated our tables and did an incredible job. That's a lot of information to have to synthesize when you're working with 6 to 8 different community members and staff members. And they did a phenomenal job synthesizing that, keeping their groups on track. And I just can't thank Dr. Johnson enough for the process that she took this committee through. So I want to remind everyone that this committee was comprised of some of our bond members were on the original Bond 22 process, and then we added about another 25 to 30 members that our administration and principals recommended, felt like would be good on there. And so that was really an administrative committee that was put together to really create this process and bring a recommendation to our Board of Trustees. So here we are, January, already at this process. I can't believe it. Feels like we just kicked it off. But Dr. Johnson, I'm going to kick it off to you, and then we'll introduce our committee members.
Perfect.
So.
Good evening, President Slayton, Dr. Carpenter, Board of Trustees. It's so lovely to be here with you tonight, and thank you for your service. I echo everything that was said earlier. It's a thankless job that you do most of the time, but I know you're here for the right reasons, so appreciate you. Thank you. Just before I introduce the committee representatives, I want to thank all of you because this is never an easy task to undertake, and some of you know that because you've been on the board with previous initiatives such as this. This is, something that you have to constantly be thinking about when you're in the middle of it, before and after. And so I appreciate you entrusting me with your group, with your stakeholders, with your students, with your teachers, your parents, your committee members. It's definitely been a pleasure to work with them. I would like to say that they were a very engaged group of people. If anyone missed, they came early to the next meeting. They wanted to get all the information possible. It was a constant barrage of information and data, and they took it in and they really processed it before making decisions. As you know, we kind of started this process in the summer, actually, the first time that we sat down to talk and start planning. But the group did come together in October and has worked since then to be very diligent in how they go about this and the decisions that they made. So let me move here to the next slide. So tonight we will have our presentation will include 3 of your amazing students who were so engaged, and all of the tables had students. These 3 were chosen just to represent the group. They're going to give you some of their experience being on the committee, and I point that out because it's very important that you hear from them. They were there through the process. They saw the numbers. They got to talk about the data, talk about the facilities. And the adults in the room really took note of their opinions and the thoughts that they had. And then we have 2 of our committee representatives who are also here that will be presenting tonight. And I don't want to take more of their time, and so I will allow them to introduce themselves specifically as they come forward. So at this time, I'd like to bring forth our first student presenter, Kate Bell.
Hi.
Kate.
So I just want to say thank you all for inviting the students. I do think that with the students, I'm very grateful that Argyle opened up the bond for us because we do live it every single day. So I just loved being on it. I learned a bunch of stuff about how to talk to some community members and just everything about the finances and how this whole thing goes. So I'm just very thankful, and I had a great time and I learned a ton. So I really feel like my opinion was valued and everyone at my table was really open to my opinion. So yeah.
Thank you, Kate, for serving.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jonah Bird. I'm a senior here at Argyle High School. When I first got on this committee, I really had no idea what this was about. Quite frankly, I was clueless, and all I knew there was free food.
And it was good food,
It was good food. It was really good food. When I first sat down and I looked at the numbers, I'm like, whoa. Because my first semester of my senior year was government, and I hadn't taken economics yet. And now I'm in economics, and I understand everything that's going on now. So I had no idea what any of those numbers mean, what all that stuff meant. But all the facilitators and all the adults, the grown-ups there, they all helped me a lot. And if it wasn't for them, I would have been lost completely. But because of those facilitators, they helped me helped me get through that entire experience. I loved putting together that bond. I learned a lot, and I definitely think that everyone at my table learned a lot too from what I had to put in. I don't think, they're not in the school every single day like we are. We see all the problems and we see the things that we want to make better. And every single time that they wanted us to make a decision, I always thought about, all those young kids, the young kids that are right now, probably not even born yet, but in kindergarten, elementary school, and middle school and 6th grade. I think about them and what I want them to experience, because I want them to have the same experience that I had. And I want them to walk out of here feeling proud to be an Eagle. So I thought a lot about that. I just want to thank y'all for that opportunity for me to really experience that. And I know that a lot of colleges will be like, oh, okay, he was doing something there. So just thank you so much for all that y'all do. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jonah.
Thank you.
Hi. I'm Lincoln Zamzo, and I'm a senior at Argyle High School. And I'm just going to be talking a little bit about what the bond committee was for me and my experience, at least. First of all, I just want to say it's awesome that you understood that or didn't understand it, because I took economics for a semester and I still, some of the stuff just went right over my head. But I will say that even though there were some things that I did not understand, I want to just piggyback off of what Jonah said about the facilitators being awesome, because I know that we had an economics final, so I couldn't come to one of the bond meetings, but I talked to Miss Leach and she carved out time during her day to sit me down and walk me through the presentation and what it was going to be like, because I missed, I think it was meetings 4 and 5, and those were the ones right up until making the actual bond. And she knew how crucial that was and how important it was that I didn't miss that, and so she sat me down and kind of walked me through it, which was just so nice and took so much stress off of my plate specifically. And everybody at my table was awesome. They were so welcoming. I had a bunch of people at my table that I actually knew, some that I didn't know, and I loved how they split it up so well to where we were all from different kind of aspects of life and all did different things. Miss Hillary was at my table and she was a teacher, and I think that we had some accountants, some people that were really good with numbers at my table, some businessmen, it was from all, and then me, a student who was not understanding a lot, but I'm trying my best. And I really felt like when it came to things that we're talking about like student atmosphere and what's going on at the school, that they were really good about like, Lincoln, what do you think? Like, what's the best? Like, what, like, they say that the capacity is this, but like, is that true? Like, how do you feel walking through the halls every day? And I just felt like so welcome. So whoever set this whole thing up, like, I was so blessed by my table. And I just want to say thank you to them, and thank you just to all of y'all for just taking time out of your day to sit and listen to us.
Thank you, Lincoln.
Lincoln, I got a question.
You don't have
You
to.
didn't turn around
you don't
fast
have to-
enough.
Am I allowed to say no? Is that allowed?
Yes.
No.
You are, the rest of us
Good
can't.
question.
Okay.
So you are in those hallways at that school at Clement Falls, right?
Uh-huh.
You've been there 3 or 4 years, right?
Yes, sir.
And one of the questions I think that was discussed maybe at the bond committee was hallway congestion.
Mm-hmm.
And you understand there's 1,500 kids or roughly in that school. Is it congested?
I definitely think, yes. I think all of us can agree that there is hallway congestion, especially when you get to where those two wings are connecting from the 15 and the 1600 hall. I just feel like it's really backed up, but I know that something that we do have in this bond is opening up for a connector, which I know that they'll get into a little bit more. And that connector is supposed to just provide so much room, which I think will make, because I know that we are not anywhere maybe near capacity yet, but I think that it will make it feel a lot just more open, and it'll make it feel like we are not at capacity, because I know going through those halls and we're all squished together, we can be like, how am I supposed to fit 100 more kids in here? Like, it's just not going to work. But I think that the congestion thing is definitely something that we really touched on in the bond. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Lincoln. That was perfect. Thank you.
You can run now.
All right. Thank you, board, for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I was very honored to serve on this committee. I do want to say quickly, though, that I think Lakin didn't give herself enough credit. She was a very well-spoken, clearly well-educated girl, and that's why we're here, right? These kids are why we're here. And I think the important thing was listening to those voices, and so I want to thank you for like allowing them to be part of our committee, because it was so, like she said, it was so important for us to understand. We don't walk the halls every day, right? We're not there kind of plowing through, especially at the middle school and at the high school. I'm at the elementary level, so it's a little different. But it was interesting to hear kind of just their day-to-day experiences in our school. So I think it was very impactful, and I mean, they're amazing, and it's clearly that's what we're producing here, and we want to continue to do that. All right, so I'm so sorry. My name's Hillary Lupo. I'm at Hilltop Elementary. I'm an educator with the district. I have 2 girls here in the district as well, and I'm also a member of the community. So I'm kind of a triple threat, so to speak, in the area. So I was able to represent us in a few different capacities as a parent, as a teacher, and as a community member. So I'm going to quickly go over kind of our committee members. So as you can see, the list of committee members, we had quite a few committee members. What we did is we were all broken up into a group, 7 to 8 people per group, facilitated by our admin from different schools. Our table of facilitators were there to kind of help us, guide us, we were able to ask a lot of questions, because there were a lot of questions. There was a lot of confusion on some things, and so we really need to understand what we were doing before we made decisions, right? We really wanted to make sure that we were making the correct decisions, and the facilitators were really there to kind of lead us without giving us opinion. And I think it's really important to note that, because we were not swayed in any way, so to speak. We were just asking questions. So the committee members, I'll go to the next slide, kind of represent our whole community, right? So we had parents, we obviously have our students, educators and admin, volunteers, community members, and members of city government. I will say that our committee was not staff heavy. We were kind of sprinkled through, right? So I want everybody to understand that with the choosing of the members of this committee, that we try to make each voter feel represented within our community. And so that's important, right? Because everybody wants to have a voice. And I think they did a great job. I mean, like Lakin just said, we had people from I think I was the only teacher at my table. And we had people that are parents or not necessarily parents, but are involved in our community in a different way. I want to remind you of our committee charge. So our committee charge, let me change my paper. All right, was created for the committee. I'm not going to read it, but it was what it was our purpose. So every time we met, we were able to go over our committee charge, and we were reminded of our purpose and what we were there for, and also the main points to direct us in creating the package for the bond. We had 6 meetings, as we already talked about. So the meeting number 1, it was kind of like the nuts and bolts. What are we doing? Why are we here? What's the process? Different information about previous bonds, which we'll go into in a little bit, and just kind of the school finance 101. Like, what are we really looking at here? What's the point? Because we've had several big bonds, right? So we're kind of like, well, how are we going to make another bond and explain this and make it people understand how it's important to our community? So that was our big why. It was also our norms and just kind of figuring out who we are in the community, why we're here. And again, we were all volunteering, and it was important for us to be there for several different reasons. Meeting number 2 was a lot, right? It was the demographic report and the facility needs presentation. For the demographic report, we had multiple reports from a demographer. And then again, as Dr. Carpenter said, up until last week, we were still getting new reports. So we were kind of having to adjust as we went based on new things coming in. And as everybody knows in Argyle, I mean, tomorrow we're gonna have something else, right? Like, so there's gonna be like something built tomorrow or new plans. It's continually changing, and so we have to continually adapt and change with it. And that's kind of where we're at right now, where we're having to do this. The facility needs presentation, I'll kind of piggyback off the facility needs presentation in meeting 2 going into meeting 3. Meeting 3 was my favorite. We went to we got on a bus, we went to different campuses. We went to Hilltop, that's my favorite, and we went to South and the middle school. It was interesting because with Hilltop, I'm there every day, but I was able to look at it differently. There's things at Hilltop I didn't even notice that were pointed out, and I was like, oh my goodness, I didn't realize, like, just the ceiling and the lighting and things that we really need to update, right? And different things like our bathrooms and just things that, it's an old building. It's a loved building, but it's an old building. And we need to, so we're gonna go into how we, a little bit touch base, but Hilltop was part of this package, updating, as well as South, to show the difference of South, or newer school, right, to Hilltop. Love Hilltop, don't change it, but it's just kind of showing you how we're going, but we still need to remember where we've been, and we need to remember our older buildings because we want to keep using them. They're going to be here. They're not going anywhere. We don't want to lose them. And then, of course, the middle school, which ironically, my daughter's at the 6th grade center, so she's at the middle school this week, and she's kind of blown away and a little scared. But it was interesting walking through those halls because we were in a crowd of 50 or so people, maybe a little bit more. And I was cramped. I mean, I get claustrophobic anyways, but you can just see the flow, how the flow would be troublesome of that campus and how there might be struggles with the kids and the amount of kids, right? And so these are all things that we're looking at. How do we need to improve? How can we make things better? How can we make these campuses grow with us? Because whether you want us to or not, we're going. Like, it's inevitable. So the facility tour addressed our facility needs in part. And it provided us also, I will note, we were on the bus. So that was a whole other thing. The buses were great. I mean, they're much fancier than when I grew up, but they're still going to need updating. There's still going to be something that we need to talk about and address because, again, of course, we're going to need more buses for more kids, but also we need more buses to be updated. So meeting number 4, We just went over the 10-year plan update, project priority presentation, and we kind of started looking at the priority worksheet. What's important to us first, second, third. Meeting number 5 was the big financial advisory presentation. The big highlight I just want to point out here is that the main point with the financial advisory presentation, the main point is that no tax rate increase implication for the project amount. You're going to get the project amount, and some of you are already familiar with the project amount. There's no tax rate increase. Meeting number 6 was when you did the big vote. Okay, so we kind of came together as a group. We all voiced our opinions. We all cast a vote, and we figured out what we thought was important for the bond package and what we thought wasn't as important. Everything was important, but some things are a little more important than other things. And so we decided what we want to focus on first, and not everything made it, okay, but we still prioritized. And that's what we want to share with you tonight, our priorities, why we think it's important, because it is, and accepting like we need to move forward here.
Thank you, Ms. Lupo.
Sure.
Thank you.
Hey, good evening. Dr. Carpenter, thank you. From someone who was on the 2022 bond, this was ran different and better, truthfully. President Slayton and the board, thank you. You guys promoting this and doing this and working on it from the summer made it work for us. Blown away by the kids. We were constantly reminded, and Miss Bell was at my table. I think she wants to be president one day. We were just reminded daily of why we were here. Every time we came in, we understood what our goal was. So with that, I'm going to get into our amount and just kind of talk through that and go from there. So one of the things that I would like to say publicly from the 2022 bond to today's bond is we didn't necessarily have a 10-year strategic plan. That was asked of us. In the 2022 bond, it wasn't our charge. It wasn't a lot of that stuff. Memory has it for me, we asked that the district come up with a plan at some point, and you guys have and did. And so with that, I want to thank you for that. So this bond was made with the 10-year strategic plan in mind. So I'll go through it. Middle school, the 10-year strategic growth plan, $458,795,000. To include a middle school number 2, an elementary school number 6, an elementary school number 7, Canyon Falls, Argyle High School Phase 3, Canyon Falls, Argyle High School baseball and softball facilities, 377 campus renovation for current capacity with cafeteria expansion into a Gym 2 space, competition and auxiliary gym rebuilds for space. The next piece was capital improvement. I think we addressed some of those with our tours. I'll say a bus isn't made for a guy my size, but I digress. The capital improvement is $37,955,000. Hilltop Elementary, 6th grade center, 377 campus. And I also want to say with the conversations we had at the table with the land acquisition, buses, and maintenance, we really wanted to make sure that we had enough number there for the land acquisition. And that was $75 million. Technology is growing, $13,500 for a total of $585,250,000 bond package for Argyle ISD.
We're going to have you speak to this because it's $585 million. That might go.
Oh, sorry.
That might be.
Gotcha. $585,250,000. Excuse me. All right. So the committee recommendation, the Argyle ISD Bond and Growth Planning Committee recommends that the Argyle ISD Board of Trustees call a bond election for May 4th, 2024. The bond election dates and deadlines are must be called by the Board of Trustees by February 16th, 2024. Early voting will be held between April 22nd and April 30th. And the election day is May 4th. And I guess I could keep up with it. I'll end with this. Again, everything was done with the kids and the future growth of Argyle ISD in mind. And the committee that most of us are here, I would tell you did an incredible job of listening to the kids, listening to the community, and making the best decision for this current bond. So.
Again, I just want to thank you. And again, the most important thing for me was to hear the kids' voices and just keeping in mind that we have to plan for this growth. We have to plan for our future. And as an educator here and as a mother, you know, I was very proud of the work we did through this committee, and I'm very not hesitant to present it at all. So thank you.
Thank you, Hillary.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for allowing us to present the package tonight. I know it's not a consent item, but we were happy to come and do the presentation. And our presenters come back?
Yes,
Please
have
come
them
back.
wait for just a moment. Do y'all mind waiting for just a moment in case the board has any questions?
So we want to open the floor for questions.
Yes. I would like to ask you just to elaborate a little bit, because I think this was an important conversation that was had over several sessions of the bond committee, was really the difference in a 5-year and a 10-year, kind of a short-term, long-term. This district's kind of used to a short-term. So will you talk a little bit about that? Because it was a discussion point over many, many meetings.
Absolutely. One of the things we are concerned about is bond fatigue, right? We had 2022, now it's 2024. If we did a $200 million bond, you know, we're sitting up there having another bond election in 2026. And so what we wanted to do is look at this towards the 10-year strategic plan, plus we also understand with land acquisitions, building, things of that nature. Dr. Johnson and her team did an amazing job letting us know those things are 18, 24 months in the rear. You know, you got to work backwards in order for those to hit a certain date. And so as we were looking at that, we really wanted to make sure that we had those items covered, where we're not calling another bond in 2026.
And you bring up a good point, because is Jeff in here? Hey Jeff, so we're facing about a 3-year process, right? From the time we want to open something, backdating 3 years, and then back behind that would be selling of a bond. So we're looking at about a 3-year process is what we're averaging right now. Is that correct? That's correct. Okay. So that's to your point.
And we took that into consideration because I know there was a lot of discussion on elementary 7,
right,
some of the expansions and things of that nature. But if you back those up, we're having a bond in 2026 to have that same conversation. And so again, keeping the 10-year strategic plan in place and understanding that you as the board review it every 6 months, right, gave us the confidence to move forward with this.
And another piece of information that came their way, once the facilities and capacity assessments were completed, is when we realized, and I mentioned this November during the 10-year kind of strategic plan update, our capacities at 377 and at Canyon Falls were not as we have been operating necessarily. The Canyon Falls capacity has been 1,750, but technically it's just over 2,100 because we weren't using some of those electives areas. We were just using core classrooms. So we had to adjust some information to our committee at that point. So that phase 3 of Canyon Falls has always been planned. It's always been planned for an additional 500, I think, seats, right? So when you look at the 2,400 that they've got on here, that's actually less than if you were to go ahead and do that connector with 500 more seats. That would put that over almost to 2,700 over there. And this committee had the conversations about no graduating class sizes over 600, so therefore they wanted to cap it at 24. So I wanted to make that point because we weren't operating off of the same information that the board originally had last year during the strategic plan adoption, because they were operating off of 1,750 when ultimately our capacity over there is higher than that. It's just over 2,100 right now. So that did change. That was some information that they had to process and adjust as they went along. So, and then the same thing at 377, we've been operating off of about 1,100, and technically our capacity over there is 1,300. So that that caused a little bit of change in the conversation. So I wanted to make sure people knew y'all had to have that discussion.
And additionally, kind of back to the long term, is we hear a lot in Argyle, like, why are we reactive opposed to proactive? And I think this gives us an opportunity to kind of get out in front of it and be proactive to the growth, as Hillary said, that's coming.
Right.
You know, I, for one, I kind of appreciate the concept as a board member to have basically access to money the time that we need, right, to build and plan and hopefully save money the quicker access we have. My concern, and maybe this was discussed in there, is some of those forward looking dollars, like elementary 6, elementary 7, they're assuming an inflation rate, which we have to because we got burned in the past. But and that is what kind of grows this total number. And so my curiosity is, discussion among the committee is the number too big to make it infeasible to pass? You know, the sticker shock is what my concern is. Even though to the taxpayer, your tax rates aren't going to go up. You know.
And I can let Hillary answer this from her table as well. From our table, one of the things I would say with that is we know that you guys have an oversight on every bond. So we know that those dollars, and the board, I think historically speaking, has done a tremendous job of making sure the dollars are well spent. Secondly, on top of that is, you know, looking at it from the long-term growth aspect of it, that trying to get out in front of that, because you almost make it too small where you know you're butting up to the next component. And so it was really important, because even like with the new data in the 6th meeting, could you make an argument to push 7 down the road? Sure, but now you're having that conversation in 26 because it's taken 3 years to get to that piece. And you know, from that standpoint, I don't know if you have anything to...
It's pretty much, we've had the same conversations really at our table. I think that you hit it on the head.
One of the things that I believe, y'all didn't, I mean, this bond package that you're bringing to us is not everything that you could have approved. Y'all went through and strategically picked the items that you thought fit within the plan and were appropriately prioritized.
Yes, sir.
Right. And we just didn't want to get ourselves in a position of where we wish we had, right?
Yeah.
And with the 10-year, I mean, who knows where we're going to be in 10 years, but growth is inevitable. You just can't argue that fact.
And one of the things I like about this exercise, especially for the community to go through it, because, you know, I've been here on this board a year and a half, and the information comes at you pretty fast. Mm-hmm. And you guys just, I mean, some of the information that you guys received in the committee is information that was new to us, that we hadn't seen yet. And it's not because it was withheld, it was just, it's coming at you quickly. Right. And you even got to experience the information you got in meeting 2 changed by the time you got to meeting 6.
We were all very surprised last week, yes.
And
the
so,
new information.
And so, you know, you get the experience, you know, people go, well, why did they do that? Why did they make that decision? You go, well, that was the information we had at that time, but it changes. And one of the things that I see in here that did change is the 2,400 at Canyon Falls. And that's primarily because we were always operating under the fact that it was 1,750. Mm-hmm. And you were going to add 500 seats to make it 2,250, but we're really sitting at 21. Mm-hmm. And what we really need to do is improve the circulation so that it really can function better. Mm-hmm. But instead of maxing that building out to make it as big as it possibly could be, the committee made the decision to say, hey, what's reasonable here is 2,400, improve the circulation.
I think the same thing holds true for 377, right? Because functional capacity went up 300 more than we had been planning on and we've been talking about for years. So you didn't need that, right? Within the 10-year strategic plan, like you said, hey, we just found 300 more seats, so we don't need to do that yet.
Right.
So we can put it off,
right,
and not just spend the money today, spend the money. So I think, from what I see, you took all those numbers and all those new data points into account and tried to be responsible with, hey, let's don't wish we had done it because we knew something was coming. We were concerned about the size of the number, but we did what we needed to do within what the 10-year strategic plan was. And you're right, prior to this bond, there wasn't one of those.
Right.
And there wasn't that guidance.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but South opened up with about a few days of time. I mean, we were we might have been moving furniture in as the kids were coming.
West was worse.
West was worse.
West was minutes.
South was a bad weather event from being a crisis. And, those were both short-term bonds. And then here we are looking at ES4, and we're just sitting here going, oh, please be good construction weather.
Absolutely, I can tell you that as an elementary school teacher.
Yeah, and so we're just like, please, no unforeseeables. And that's the stress in a fast-growth district that I like about a longer-term bond, is that we're right up against it and have been right up against it. And we've dodged the bullet some, but I'm not so sure we're going to be able to keep doing that as this growth keeps coming.
And I'll say from the bond committee, I mean, it's still up there, parking lot, we had complete transparency after every meeting. Meaning, and there were, Dr. Johnson might be able to speak to it, there was one that was 96 parking lot questions.
Yes, we answered them. I can attest to that.
Whatever, there was enough, and so you had the community and you had the kids putting things up there. What about this? What about that? And so they did a tremendous job of answering our questions, so we could make a strategic decision and a well-informed decision.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And where's Jeff? Last year, I think you were telling us middle school 30 months. I mean, I remember last year we were sitting there talking about the growth plan. You were saying it's a 30-month process. You're sitting here today, you've added another 6 months to it.
Yes, middle school would be longer than our, say an average of 3 years, because the construction time on that's going to, probably range 14, 16, maybe even 18 months on that project. But we're still looking at year worth of design and then, 6 to 8 months worth of town approvals. And so we're really looking at a 3.5 year from the time, we say, okay, let's go find an architect to the day I open the door.
And I mean, correct me, but I thought we were looking at 30 months when we started middle school 1. We were kind of projecting a 30-month.
It's possible because
so we've already moved that.
Based on these past couple of projects, we've seen these approval timelines with the towns are adding a lot of time to it. So we're looking for ways that we can shorten that now.
And the reason I'm emphasizing that is because that's just another data point where things change. And they change fast. I mean, just sitting here last year, we were thinking we could do this in 30 months, and now you're saying 3 to 3.5 years.
Yes.
And the other change too, Liz, approximately how much was Argyle West Elementary? 26,
22 and change, I think, was our final construction cost. Didn't include our FF&E and architectural soft costs.
So 22 and change. And as we look at this bond number here, like initially, like, yes, that's a big number. Like, that could be the biggest past bond in the history of Argyle ISD. But we look at acceleration and costs of construction. Elementary school 7, approximately 91 million for the same prototype school.
Sounds right, because I think our all-in was over 100 on that one.
Right. So we're looking at this saying, okay, well, what we built a school for 22 million, we're going to build relatively the same school for over 100 million.
Yes.
And we're trying to, with it being a prototype, trying to save money.
Well, and I think what we're saying is that we're giving ourselves potentially, if it comes to that.
Yeah.
We should not have to, hopefully it doesn't come to that.
Yeah, hopefully it doesn't come to that.
Hopefully it doesn't come to that, but we're not in a position where if it does come to that, we're going to be underfunded for those projects. And if we don't need those bond funds, we don't bond those. We don't sell those bonds. So I appreciate the forethought put into that, especially what we've gone through the last couple of years with escalated costs. So thank you, committee, for your thoughts on that. So
thank you all.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lupo. Thank you, Mr. McDowell.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson.
Okay. We got Mr. Bowles. You want to come on down?
All right.
You want to talk more commas?
Pay for it.
Commas.
We're going to talk commas and where we are today.
Absolutely. Glad to be here. Thank you. Good evening, Dr. Carpenter, members of the board. It's always fun to come out here, and I've really enjoyed that presentation. I wish I was one of those kids, right? And my teacher never said nice things about me like that. Incredible. It's fun to see that. I'm really glad you guys involved them. I don't have the clicker in my hand. You got it? Okay. But so I just wanted to tee this up as follows. I wanted to go through a couple things in the market, we need to cover off the information about selling the remaining portion of your already authorized issuance, and then talk about the very matter that they just so well covered and how we would implement that should you so decide to move forward with that amount from the bond election. So I'm going to hit a couple pages here real quick. These graphs are not showing up all that well on this screen, and I'm not real sure why, but I think you have this deck in your board packet, so you'll get to see them better. And frankly, the only thing I wanted to talk about here is where we think rates are headed, because that will be an important discussion for you all to have as you go into 2024 and think about selling at least this remaining portion of your authorization. In the upper right-hand quadrant of this page, I'll focus on taxable rates. U.S. Treasuries 2, 5, 10, and 30-year bonds, we believe, are going to trend downward in terms of the relative rate. A lot of that has to do with the guidance that we've gotten from the Federal Reserve of late. They're anywhere from 4 to 6 rate cuts going into 2024, depending on the particular day that you pick them up on and the news feed that you get. So there's incredible amounts of evidence out there that suggests that inflation is mostly in check. They've got the biggest part of it yet to go. The last couple of percentage points are always the hardest, but we do believe that rate pressure will begin to come down as it relates to your borrowing cost. And I spiked that point on the second page, and again, these graphs aren't translating for some reason, and I'm not real sure why, but they're in the very book that you have in front of you. In the lower left-hand portion, these are pure tax-exempt interest rates. So this is kind of my Dow Jones. I look at this every day. It's the municipal market data curve, and you've got 3 separate curves there. The purple curve is the 15-year average, and then the other 2 curves, yellow and lighter blue, are where we were a year ago and where we are today, and they're virtually identical, which is interesting. We just caught it on the right day. All of that to say that we're well below average in terms of the 15-year, and in a good spot, I think, for anyone that wants to borrow, should that be their desire. And then, we've got to work on this. I'm not sure if this is our issue or what this is, but okay, the top graph is one that I love, and it's in the book you have there. It's the Bond Buyer Index. It's made up of 20 municipal bonds taken on a weekly basis, and you can see what the index rate there. The key thing here is that just from a huge swath of time, over 60 years of data, rates have been higher 89% of the time. So, just rest assured, if you're in the community and people ask the question, is now the right time to be borrowing just strictly off the rates market, that might be something that you relate to them as you have that discussion. And as I said earlier, I wanted to briefly cover off the notion that you still have almost $55 million in remaining authorization from your last bond election. We are scheduled to sell that this summer, and consistent with what we've done in your past issuance cycles, we'll wait to see what your taxable assessed valuation comes in at. We'll know better. You'll begin to get reads on that. We'll be working very closely closely with your CFO and your superintendent to make sure that we're considering those measures as we go into the summer. But we'll want to know precisely what that is, because not only do we want to structure these bonds around that, but we want to be able to set up a potential bond election around what's to come in future growth. I loved what the previous presenter said. You're at 50 cents on your INS tax rate, so you can't go above that. So there is no tax increase associated with 2024 issuance of your previous authorization, and the same will hold true as we get into new authorization for this upcoming bond election. One quick thing here is we're always going to be very conservative on rates, despite what I just said about where we think rates are headed. We never want to put you in a position of borrowing at a higher cost. And so number 6 there is the projected rate is taken as of January 10th this month, plus 75 basis points. So we've got some cushion built in there. So we hope to deliver a financing that is well below these projections. And then we just dive right into this number that was just presented by the bond committee, the $585 million of authorization that you may choose to call an election round around for May of 2024. The last slide in this deck is information on timing as to what needs to be done to legally call that, the election dates that they spoke to early, and the actual election date. I'll get through that later. But assuming you have this May 2024 election, we've designed a plan to implement that. And there is a consistent theme here with every board that I've ever spoken to in your district, and that is that you will only sell the amount of bonds that you can afford to sell based on the growth that you've had in that year. So if the kids don't come and the rooftops don't follow, there is no growth, and you won't sell bonds, not because you don't want to, but because you can't. So there is this automatic trigger that you bump up against that I think provides some comfort in knowing that this may not exactly play out the way we're thinking about it today. We'll have to see how your growth goes as we go forward. It's never in a straight line. It's always a little bit bumpy, and we'll adapt as we go forward. We actually have sort of a hotline with Liz's office. It's always back and forth about what the taxable assessed valuation is today and what it'll be tomorrow, and what if we did this and what if we did that. And it's always a lot of fun for us because it's a bit of a puzzle, but just know that we'll be engaging in that type of communication with your superintendent and your CFO. We got the summary of assumptions and the structuring assumptions around this. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it. It's very consistent with all the assumptions that we've used in the past. I just, gave you the information about when we'll sell this based off your TAV. I think perhaps the most important thing for us to look at tonight is your taxable assessed valuation growth. And so what we have on this chart here is historical measures, so numbers that have been printed and have proven to be true based off development within the district, and then what we project going forward. And you can see it goes up fairly significantly as we move forward through 2033, 2034. But thereafter, we don't change it. We just flatline it. And there's two reasons we do that. One, it's really, really hard for us to predict what's going to happen beyond that period of time. And number two, we don't know what your district will look like at that point. It could be, I'm not saying it will be, it could be that you might need another election to facilitate capital expansion in the district. I don't know that. I'm not selling that. But we never like to put you in a position where we just continue to grow the model to a rate that is exorbitant and put you in a spot of not having future capacity. So this considers, even beyond this bond election, your ability to have capacity if you should so grow.
Do you ever see it go down?
I'm sorry?
Do you ever see it go?
I have seen it go down. That typically happens in mineral-rich areas in the state. So West Texas is very well known for that. I mean, Ector County ISD, Midland ISD, they have bond elections, and they put something like this up there, and then you come back and the next year, it's come way down. So yours is a little more predictable. Actually, let me back up. Yours is much more predictable based off sticks and bricks. You can drive around and see it and touch it, and you can have conversations with a demographer and developers, and you have a better sense of what's actually going to happen in your district than you do what's under the ground with oil and gas. So this is a very different game. This is modestly aggressive, I would say, but it's not unrealistic. And I want to speak to that with definitive terms so that you have some comfort around why we've done this. We've got below that chart and the colors match. So your historical colors are in the royal blue there. And just kind of scan across at the percentage change. 19, 11, 13, 15, 19, 14, 13, 15, 27, 20. I mean, these are big double-digit increases year over year over year, and you've seen the growth in your community, so I don't have to tell you how that's manifested itself out there. It's mostly in single-family homes. So if you go down to the next row, well, just go out to the right, I'm sorry, you can see the averages. The 10-year average is 16%, the 5-year average is 18%, the 3-year average is 21%. You've had a nice little spurt here of late. And so there is great justification for what we've put down below for your projected growth. And I'll just go through these percentages again. 18, 18, 18, 15, 15, 12, 12, 8, 6, 6. We drop this thing down considerably as we get further out because we just don't know what might come about. Higher interest rates, lack of development. You just don't know what's going to happen. So we like to taper the end of it off so is more agreeable with a possible downturn or a possible change. All of this to say, and to repeat what I said earlier, and that is that you never really know what the growth will look like. It seems to be lumpy, and that's why we've got, you know, a good relationship and communication line with your district, because we have to modify and adjust, and then that ripples through your construction process and that sort of thing. You've done this before. Since 1997, you've never done it any differently. You've always voted an amount that you didn't have the taxable assessed valuation against which to sell it, but you've worked your way into it over a period of time. And that's the way it's always been at Argyle, at least as in my 20-something years.
And that's the way it works in a lot of districts.
It's the way it works in most fast-growth school districts. They bump up against that 50 cents. The kids are coming. They can hear them coming, and they've got to prepare for them, and they don't have a choice. If you just look up and down the I-35 corridor, take it from here all the way down to Austin, go down 45 towards, or go down 35 to San Antonio over to Houston. Half of those districts have this issue. They've got to do what they've got to do, and it's in more of the suburban, areas that you see that.
And what you're saying is a lot of those communities that are fast growth communities have gotten authorizations from their communities to borrow more money than they have capacity for.
At that moment in time. Right.
And they just take it down as that capacity increases, and that puts that district in a very good position to move as the people are coming.
That's correct. And typically the districts that have the ability to do that also have a track record of delivering on that notion, and you all have that. You've never voted something that you couldn't ultimately sell, and I think, this is my professional opinion, you've been responsible about doing that in pieces across time. If you look at your debt portfolio, you have multiple series of bonds. And one might look at that and say, well, why didn't they just sell this instead of in 20 pieces and 4 pieces? Well, because you couldn't. You did a little bit at a time and worked your way into it very slowly, responsibly, and methodically.
So if your projections are off, it's not 18%, it's 12%. We're kind of okay because that means people aren't coming.
Right.
It kind of goes hand in hand.
Right.
And we don't need to borrow it because
Correct.
we build it as fast and we have a low.
We tap the brakes. We just slow the process down, and we sell what you can sell, and we work with Dr. Carpenter and Ms. Stewart on exactly how that's going to be done. What are you going to build? What's it going to look like? What do you actually need right now? We tap the brakes enough to get that piece done.
It's like whatever the speed limit sign is, we'll be able to match it.
Correct.
Whether it's slow down or speed up.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I think that's the good idea about a long-term bond, is that you have the option to do that.
Right.
And be forward-thinking that way and kind of take your time and get into it, rather than I just have this to work with right now, then I have this to work with.
Right.
It just makes the decision-making a lot easier in that regard.
So this slide is the story of Argyle ISD. If there's one slide you need to dog ear, this is it, because this will be what we use to determine what you can sell over time, right here. Now, this is in your book and on that page, but I've also provided a legal sheet. It's the same page, I promise, we didn't change anything. And one might argue, well, Matt, you probably should have just summarized this, but I think it's a really good exercise to walk through because it explains the methodology by which we install these bond sales and explains the flexibility that we have around each one of them, because you need to maintain maximum flexibility. And so as you're working from left to right in the darker shaded blue there, we have information from your last voted authorization and a little information or some information on what we project this 2024 sale to look like. And again, that's 75 basis points over market on an interest rate. And then we come up with what we will have in total outstanding debt. And then we very methodically, and I say we, I give Julie McMillan credit for this. I did not do this, she did this. To build each one of these bond sales so that they dovetail one to the next and lock into a pattern that ultimately arise in column 16, and that's your total combined debt service for your entire portfolio of the district. And so those are our targets right there. And then we have some deducts. You have some fund balance. You have some other revenues, frozen taxes, OSHA. There's just some things that come out of that to arrive at a net debt service. And then we compare that with what your taxable assessed value is, and that comes right off that previous page that we talked about. And so we can change that as we go forward to mirror what the actual numbers are and give you an actual tax rate. So we'll show up when it's time to do your tax rate, and we'll say, this is where you finished, this is what you have outstanding, and this is what 50 cents will generate to service that debt. And again, you can just look out in column 24 there, and you can see that the tax rate is 50 cents, and it just kind of works its way down there. And it begins to taper off, and that goes back to that discussion I had earlier about flexibility for the future. You haven't hit 50 cents all the way out. You've got some space out there, and to the extent that you grow faster, you'll have even more. So you've got capacity in the future. You can get this installed, but so long as we hit those measures from your tax base as we go forward. We designed this page as key considerations. I think I said every one in my presentation, but I do kind of want to go through this because I love your commentary and your acknowledgement of some of the things I've said. When you call a bond election, you're just asking the voters for authorization. You're not actually procuring a debt at that point in time. You're just asking for the ability to do so in the event that you hit the measures that we've talked about. You only actually commit whenever we sell the bonds, and that provides a legal order. So I've got to come back to you, present a plan of finance, and we do that every year and walk through it so that you can see exactly what you're going to sell and what that's going to do to your tax rate. So that's the only time at which you actually, I was about to sneeze, about to incur a debt. Since 1997, I said this earlier, you've never done it any other way. There are districts out there, don't get me wrong, that they're at 20, I'm making this up, 20 cents on their INS rate, and they need to borrow $100 million, and it's going to cost them 10 cents, and they're going from 20 to 30 cents, and it's real simple. That hasn't been that way out here since I've been involved, and so this is very consistent with what you all have done. In fact, it's entirely consistent. Your TAV growth projections presume that you've got new housing starts. I think we all know that's what's driven the district, the beginning of the Flower Mound Ranch project, as well as the growth in value of what's already on the ground that comes in residential and commercial. We go through a process by which we certify your taxable assessed value on a forward basis. We have to have a future projection for a state funding mechanism that gets tripped. We work with a certified or registered appraiser, professional appraiser to do that. That's consistent with what you've always done, albeit it used to be with Denton County's tax office. Now it's with an RPA. And then again, finally, one more time, the ultimate timing and size of bond sales under this election is really based off what you incur in terms of growth with your TAV. And then here's the calendar that I spoke to earlier. The final date on which you can call a May election is February the 16th. I have on my calendar to be here for your meeting on February the 5th. So there's no action on this tonight. This is for consideration and questions and commentary. Know that we'll be back on the 5th. We can answer questions again then. At that point in time, your bond counsel, Rudy Segura with McCall, Parkhurst, and Horton will be here to answer any legal questions around the actual order calling the election. So you'll have that chance to bounce legal issues or what you can and can't do during an election off of him at that point in time. And with that, I'll stop, but I'm happy to stand here as long as I need to answer your questions and provide more commentary.
I'm just trying to think how you get hurt. And so, I mean, if we have a housing crisis and everybody goes down and protests their taxes, a bunch of foreclosures, TAV goes down 10%.
Right.
Then it just means we can't borrow, right?
Or we're gonna have to wait longer?
You would wait longer until it passed. The previous obligations that you sold are called unlimited tax obligations. People say, well, if it's unlimited, why did you just tell me it's at 50 cents? The 50-cent test is a statutory mandate, so that when you sell the bonds and you give that package to the Attorney General's office for approval, you have to certify at that point in time that you can levy all your debt service with 50 cents. It doesn't preclude you legally, though, from raising that rate above 50 cents to service your debt to an unlimited rate if you should need to do that. That's not desirable, I get that, but you wouldn't default on the debt. It would create a crunch, and you'd have to wait a while, and would do some things to your Tier 1 money. Not the basic, might impair slightly your budget, but that's what would happen. You would not be unable to service the debt.
Yeah. If something like that happens, everybody's in a crisis.
Yeah, there's bigger problems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyone else have anything for Matt?
I was gonna say, I appreciate speaking in language that's easy to understand. Because I know, in your business, you probably have all your own terminology and things, things that you say, but I think it's great, when you speak in public, to speak so that, the public understands, we can understand, exactly what all these tables and everything means. That means a lot. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for saying that.
We're sorry you didn't hear it in high school, but we appreciate you.
Yeah, I just got it, finally.
So.
And it wasn't just high school.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Stop, we're not feeling comfortable.
Yeah. No, I was a really good student.
Okay.
I really was. They just didn't say it.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Liz?
We got Liz.
Okay.
Yep. Miss Stewart.
Liz has done this before. Like,
She just gets up and walks to the
she just
bathroom.
gets up and walks to the bathroom. You know what you're doing, Liz. Like,
It's not your turn.
All right, let's see. You're going to do it for me. Okay. So this is the 24-25 budget planning and update. And if you'll recognize, this is a little bit earlier than what you've looked at future budgets in the past. But we've talked about this for a long time. This budget planning is going to be a little more difficult than it has in previous years. And so I'd like to look at a few things first. Again, this is just an overview. This is not dollars. This is just a process and a calendar. Kind of to let the board know what we're planning administratively and what we're going to go through over the next few months. But I wanted to look at how we got here and why we're starting this process early. So we're going to go back to the 2019 legislative session, the 86th session. So that was the last major change to school finance in the state of Texas, and it was a major revamp of school funding. It's House Bill 3. It was intended to increase funding for all districts, and as they were going through the process, they realized, hey, not every district received an increase, and we talked about this. We were one of those districts, and they came up with something called the Formula Transition Grant to bridge that gap to actually so that every district received an increase. They also made one other really important change in the school funding formula, and that was a change from prior year to current year TAV values. And what that means is prior to this session, as we're planning our budgets, the funding formula would look at the previous year's TAV value, but you would tax and you would levy a tax and collect taxes on the current year. But in the funding formula, they recognize the prior year. So for districts that were growing, which were many districts across the state growing in TAV value, you had a little bit of a gap there, and it was a benefit. And it was a great benefit to a district like us that was growing quite a bit in TAV value along the way. So when they made that change to current year value, then you're looking at the school funding formula, your TAV value in the same year that you're taxing, you lose that gap. So it really hurt districts that were growing like ourselves. So that was another important change. That a lot of districts are now seeing and feeling the pain under that pressure.
Can I ask you a question? Has anything you've seen in the special sessions, the bills, the funding bills, try to change that?
No.
That's
I think that's a done,
That's
we haven't
baked
heard
in.
anything about going back and changing that. It would have been to Argyle's benefit for that to not happen. It would have been to many districts' benefit for that to not have happened. That actually got put in place, you know, it was talked about for a long time, and it was determined, no, that's not a good thing, not a good thing. It would always get presented in the bills, and it would be taken out. It got put in right at the last minute when House Bill 3 was voted in. So it was something that I consider was kind of snuck in at the end. But I don't see that changing at this point. I think it's just an important point along the way for us to look at a change in the funding formula and how that affects us. So we're going to jump up to the 2023 88th legislative session. Of course, we all know there was a record budget surplus at the state level. There was no action to increase the basic allotment since 2019, despite record inflation levels. There was no relief to formula transition grants. Districts, we had 4 special sessions with no action on school funding. The only action was the property tax relief was passed in the second special session. And we all know we got to see a little over an 18-cent decrease in our M&O tax rate this year, which was great. But there was lack of action by the legislature on any other school funding, and many districts across the state are in a funding crunch at this point, and are presented with some funding cliffs. So that's just kind of
And we can be real clear about this. The reason, it's not because the House and the Senate didn't come up with school funding bills. They came up with school funding bills, but the governor said, I'm not signing it unless it has school choice vouchers, ESAs in it.
That's correct. They were all
That's the
tied to
reason.
school choice.
It's not that they didn't want to. Both bodies wanted to do it, and they prepared bills, but he said, I'm not signing it.
Yes. So we're hearing rumors of a 5th special sessions potentially in February, March. That may or may not happen. We're way past waiting on the legislature at this point. We have to plan on not having any legislative help going into next year. So we're in the budget process at this point. Administratively, we've been in this budget process for months. We work behind the scenes. In a normal budget year, you would not hear an update until March or April from us. But we need to start with the board level now, and we talked about this in many of our updates and talked about this quite a bit along the way. So here are some things that we're going to do this year. It's kind of a look month by month. Some ongoing things, of course, we always are developing the budget, including look at efficiencies and revenue enhancements. We're constantly planning in our administrative cabinet for budget planning. So those things are ongoing, and they happen all the time and have been happening. In January, we've got our regular board meeting, and again, we're talking to you at this point much earlier than normal. We've also are going to be in the campus and department budget planning, which is earlier than we normally are with them. At the end of January, we receive, talking about those current year versus prior year values. So we actually don't get our values until the end of January, and that's for the 23-24 funding year. So we get certified values in July prior to passing our budget. We use that, what we have to estimate is what's called a T2 value in there. We actually don't get that information from the state until the end of January. And that's for the current year that we're in. So that's another thing that they changed on us, is we had one known in that funding formula because you always knew it a year ahead of time, and now we're in the year and halfway through before we actually have that comparing to what we estimated for the budget. So we'll get those numbers at the end of January for this current year. In February, we're going to have a board workshop in February 5th, which is much earlier than normal. Dr. Carper has extended invitations to our state senator and our House representatives. I believe that some of them are sending senior staff, and we may have one representative that may actually be able to
Senator
Mm-hmm.
Parker is going to send his senior staff. He called me personally and said he will be at an energy summit regarding energy grid that particular day, but he is sending his senior staff. 2 of the state reps, Stuckey and Temesh, have asked for recordings, and I think Representative Hayes is going to try to be here in person, but I haven't gotten a confirmation.
So we think it's important that they hear the process that districts like ourselves are having to go through. And again, we aren't alone in this. It's many districts across the state are in deficit budgets and are continuing to look at deficit budgets going forward. On February 20th, at the regular February meeting, you'll actually have a staffing efficiency study from Moat Casey. They've been in that process for a while. We'll have another update, and then you will have a staffing plan by Mr. Daniel and his department for information only for the 24-25 year in February.
I also want to say real quick on that staffing efficiency report, Moat Casey's been in, they're in their analysis portion right now. They've met with our secondary principals, looking at master schedules. Our teachers are required to have one planning period, so that's all required by law. A planning period for a teacher is not at risk, but if anybody has more than one, those are things that are going to potentially be discussed during that staffing study. Those will be things that they may have as recommendations, so I wanted to be clear on that.
All right, then we're going to roll to March. We're just planning at this point budget updates for every board meeting, anything that's changed, anything that we're working on. In April, at the end of April, we actually will receive our first look at TAVs for next year. And it's typically the very end of April. From the time that we receive that certified estimate from DCAD, we will receive an update every Friday through mid-July. And then July 25th, they actually certify values for us. But the first look is at the end of April. We're planning another budget workshop in May at a point to be determined, that when we can come up with a date that works for the board. If there's a need before then, we'll have another budget workshop. If there's a need after, we'll have additional. This may be a multiple budget workshop year. We may have, we've had 2 last year when we needed to. We may have more than that this year. So it's as we're working through this, it's what's needed at the time, and we'll make plans for that and what the board would actually want to see. June. Typically in June, we have the compensation plan presented by Mr. Daniel and his department. Again, we have weekly updates. July is when, again, we get those certified values. That is a big point in our budget planning. We'll also publish the notice of public meeting to discuss budget and proposed tax rate. That's a requirement before we can adopt our budget. And then in August, at this point in time, we're planning on adopting our budget and tax rate on August 19th at the regular August board meeting. However, there may be some changes to when we adopt our tax rate based on some discussions that we're going to have on some revenue enhancements that may come into play. So some action steps for this process. We're going to continue our legislative advocacy plan, especially if they're going to bring in additional special sessions, or if they're just planning for the next legislative session. We need to continue to be active in that. We're going to have our first board budget workshop on February 5th. We're going to have additional workshops as needed. And then we are collaborating with other area districts, because as we said, we are not the only district in this that are seeing deficit budgets and seeing things like no legislative help. That's across the state. So we've actually already been to one meeting with some area districts just to have ideas. What are some ideas that other area districts are doing? What are we doing? We're collaborating, seeing if something that's working for them might be something we consider. And again, it's just collaboration, because we aren't alone in this. I know sometimes when you're looking at some of the possibilities that has to come with the budget efficiencies that we're having to look at, it can feel lonely out there. And I know the board may feel like you're out there on an island trying to make these decisions, but just know we aren't the only ones. All of our neighboring districts are in the same spot that we are. Some were in it a little bit earlier than us. Some may have a little bit farther to go, but all of us are having to go through this process at this point in time. So we're currently identifying possible budget efficiencies. Again, we mentioned that staffing study with Moat Casey. We're doing departmental reviews. We've already completed a department review by TASBO with our transportation department. Moat Casey will do a special education review in January or February, I believe. And then we're going to look at possibilities of additional department reviews. We've been creating some ideas of efficiencies. We're working on putting dollar amounts to those. We'll bring those, a detailed list, to you in our first budget workshop. Not all of those will have dollar amounts yet. That will be a work in process. But we're also going to bring you potential revenue streams and some ideas there. The biggest possibility there, that the largest revenue stream, is a Vader. And that would be a possibility that we would need to discuss and look at and see if that would be something the board would want to consider for next year. But again, you'll get a detailed list starting with the budget workshop on February 5th. Again, not everything will have a dollar amount. Those will be developed along the way, but that will at least show you where we're at in the process. We'll actually present you with numbers then and where we feel like that we're at if we don't do anything, what that budget deficit would be, and what some steps that we need to take to get it down to, are we going to be able to bring a balanced budget? Is it going to be a 2 or 3 year process? And what the board feels like our direction should be on that. So, is that the last one? All right. Do you have any questions on that process?
I'm going to say it again because it's therapeutic. And correct me if I'm wrong, if I have any of these details wrong. my understanding is the state has approved a budget. And the budget has in it $4 billion for basically public education.
Correct, that's
And
correct.
that budget also has in it, in a whole separate line item, $500 million for school choice.
Correct.
And the governor and the Congress has refused to release that $4 billion to us until this $500 million, unless this $500 million is included. And there's a debate within, I guess, the parties and some Republicans that they're saying, hey, we don't want that $500 million that we have, this whole separate line item. They want to expand the state budget for another $500 million. And then they want to say, the governor wants this $500 million to be universal, that it can go to any kid to go to private school. Even existing private school kids have access to this $500 million. It has to be universal. You can't put any restrictions on kids in underperforming schools or underprivileged kids. It has to be universal, no restrictions applied. And that $500 million, I guess they have some priorities in it, but he won't release the $4 billion until that $500 million is given away, right?
That's correct.
And also in that $500 million, they want to make sure that, you know, you can't give that money away, that tax dollar money away for free. You actually have to create 3 to 5 state agencies, bureaucrats, to oversee this $500 million. So we have $500 million new line item budget. You know, our small government, limited government, local government conservatives want to create a whole new line item budget for $500 million. And then they want to create 3 to 5 new state agencies, bureaucrats, to administer the $500 million, which means disperse tax dollars to go to private school. And then they want to pay those 3 to 5 state agencies $40 million in tax dollars.
That's correct.
And until they get that $40 million approval to pay these agencies, until they get that bill to approve those 3 to 5 agencies, until they get that bill to grow the state government, they're not going to give us the $4 billion.
That's where we're at right now.
And that's pathetic. And the reason, and that's the nonsense that's requiring us to have all these meetings, to have this workshop, to go through these efficiencies and do this type of activity.
Yes. If they would increase the basic allotment with the money that's already out there, it would change what we're looking at.
Yeah. And it's
Isn't
ridiculous.
it part of the nonsense too that our local officials won't do anything to fight it?
They've all voted for it.
They've all voted in favor of it. And we invite them to a budget workshop and they're all of a sudden busy. And they send their...
And that's why I'm grateful is that you, Dr. Carpenter, went out and said, come to this meeting, please come to this meeting and look at the decisions we have to make, because you guys, you know, are insisting on growing the size of the state government and creating more bureaucrats and paying them $40 million. And you said, because you're so dead set on that, growing the size of the state government and ballooning the cost, we're having to do these things. Talk about efficiencies, not filling positions, cutting programs, no raises, no breaks. I mean, that's just the reality of it.
And at least 3 of those are up for re-election, right?
Yes, but here's the deal. I don't know where they all stand. I don't know that their opponents.
Well, we can see where they voted in the last go round.
The truth is,
we know where they stand.
I mean, this is just the truth. 21 Republicans voted against school choice. They thought that big fat cat government bill shouldn't pass. And you know, their reward for that is they're getting primaried, and the small government conservatives are supporting their opponents, their primary opponents, to get a fatter, bigger, more expensive government, oddly. And public education better pay attention to what's going on, because that decision is going to be made in March. It's not in November, it's going to be made in March. And if you want public school ed advocates, pay attention. All right, I feel better.
You did forget that that 500 million is year one. It'll go up. It's
Yeah.
gone up in every state.
In the 40 million, the reason I use 40 million because the bill, I read the bill, it says 8% of that school choice bill goes to administration, the state agencies to administer it. And you know, I'll tell you, you know who's going to be these state agencies. It's going to be the special interest groups that are writing the checks to the campaigns, and they're in line to be the agencies that get hired that get paid the 40 million when it's 500 million. But when it goes to $1 billion, it's going to be $80 million. So it's a good investment for them to fund.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rest your case.
Counselor, you rest.
Thank you.
Okay.
Can I?
That's his call to action.
Pay attention.
Council rests.
Okay.
Jeff.
So, my turn. Good evening. I've got quite a few reports for you tonight. I've actually got two of our architects here to give you updates on our projects that are in design, nearing completion of design. So, first I have Marty Sims with VLK come up and give you a presentation on our stadium and indoor activity center. And then afterwards, we'll have Keith Cummins with Corrigan come up and give you a presentation on the middle school.
Good evening, Marty.
Good evening. Well, I'll follow that. It's great. I'm excited to be able to give you guys a design update on the stadium here. Feel free to stop me with any questions that you have. Opening with an image here of the exterior, kind of walk-up area. Want to be clear that what you see with regard to the branding and all of that is going to be worked out. But not only that, with whatever we land on, we want to make sure that ultimately, if things were to change, if this were to need to be a district-wide logo, say, or a more generic name, we'd be able to accommodate that. And so, what we would propose for the areas where you're seeing the eagle would be their own standoffs. It's a piece of metal basically that's branded on there, and that would come off and then could be replaced with, say, a District A or something along those lines if that was the direction you guys wanted to go, knowing that that's not set in stone just yet, but we're going to show the eagle for now, and we'll work through that as we get closer to bid date. So here you see kind of the if you'll remember, this is the new parking area that we would be proposing on the home side. You've got an awning that really designates the main entry here, and we'll be funneling people through those front doors and then opening up all of the exits for egress at the end of the game so that they can go out any direction that they want, separating home and visitors, obviously. You see this is going to be 7,500 seats, as we've discussed. We've got a 2-story press box here with a mezzanine level on the first floor, and that's what you see kind of hanging below the back of the bleachers there. In order to comply with the town's masonry requirements, we've included masonry down low, which is very typical of the buildings you currently have out here, right? So we're matching the aesthetic. We're going to reuse some of those materials that look great, and we'll be working with using a metal panel up high that will require a variance from the city, and we'll be working, or from the town, and we'll be working with the town to make that variance happen. We've already discussed it. It's something that they've approved on previous stadiums for Louisville ISD, so it shouldn't be a big deal. And you'll also notice there's some screening there that screens the underside of the bleachers. When we move to the site plan, this is essentially as you saw it last time. The only difference is we showed you the master plan last time, so it showed the future baseball softball complex. This is the current location of baseball and softball. So you'll see what it would look like when we finish today. But other than that, it is as you saw it. There's the existing field house there to the north of the stadium. We have the home side on the left and the visitors side on the right. We are showing 3 concession and toilet buildings. They're modular, meaning they're all of the same size, so we can get some economy of scale there. And with the option, should you ever expand in the future, you would add a 4th down on the southeast corner there. And this is just a little bit of a closer view, so you can kind of view a little closer area of the stadium here. You'll notice the indoor practice facility is up there in the green, so we've got 65 yards under a roof with a small, kind of fairly simple dressing area and some storage, and then day-to-day use restrooms right there.
So we know, are you going to go over the indoor practice facility?
I have an exterior elevation, but I'm happy to take any questions you've got.
So the question on this is, so we know our current one, how is this similar or dissimilar?
A very similar size field, similar amenities. There's similar video amenities with regard to purchase. If you look at I've got a floor plan I'll show you in a second, but if you look, there's a stairway up to where they have video purchase. It does not have some of the external things that has. This has got a small, kind of a fairly simple dressing area with benches and toilets and showers, and then it has a small storage area, and it's got day-to-day use restrooms for the students who are using it to practice during the school day.
That would double as the visitor locker room, correct?
That would be the visitors' locker room, and there's some talk about potentially cross-country as well.
Right, okay. And this stadium seating split is 70-30, correct?
That is correct. So 70% on the home side, 30% on the visitor side. And we always, whether you think you need it or not, the thought is that we want to be able to accommodate future expansion should you ever need it. And so we've tried to anticipate not putting something that would be in the way if you ever wanted to go up to 9,000 or 10,000. You could potentially do that. Of course, you would be required to do that additional restroom and concession area.
And you're showing 7,500 seats?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
If we wanted to look at reducing that, it would be, we could take a bay off of each end and get it down to 6,000 fairly simply. It wouldn't move the press box, which would be which would be ideal. And then that way, again, you would add that on each side, north and south, should you want to go that way in the future.
So you're not going to come back if I ever convince my fellow board members that 6,000 is the way to go, that smaller, more intimate is better. Certainly, instead of overbuilding.
I don't think it's fair to say that we're all saying 7,000, 7,500 seats. I don't think we're 6-1 on talking that. So I want to make sure it's said like that. We've not said, Josh says 6,000, the rest of us are like, no way, Josh, we're going bigger. And
feels like that.
Well, feelings
originally
aren't facts.
it was 9.
I'll let the therapist say that.
Went back to 6.
I know the feeling.
We're trying to get 75.
But I just want to make sure because I'm a proponent of certainly starting out maybe in the 6,000 range, because I think we're not going to need 7,500 until we really reach a size of this district that is far out in the future. That I think it's just going to lend itself to a much more competitive environment, nice, kind of what we're used to experience, to have it down to 6. You're not going to come back and say, "Oh wow, you're changing the design on me, man. Here's a big design fee."
It's fairly simple. Now what I would anticipate if you directed me to do that is we would shave off the sides right on both visitors and home to get down that additional to that capacity. That we would build the envelope of the restrooms the same size, but we would basically put less toilets in and potentially less sinks, and just add that into the additional storage, which could always be used.
So one of the cool things about reducing the size from 7,500 to 6,000 is I'm not spending a bunch of money on sinks and toilets and parking spaces that aren't going to be used.
You would save that relative amount potentially of those things, yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
Parking's not going to change.
We would keep the parking.
Yeah, you would, at that point you would have to see kind of exactly what it translates to, and if it's worth. I mean, potentially you could shave a little bit off, but the return maybe on parking is not quite as much as you might think. But we could run those numbers pretty easily, and quite frankly, it could be an alternate. Now, I want to be judicious with our alternates, right? So, meaning we would take both numbers on bid day and let you guys make the decision as part of the award of the contract. Now, we've talked about a number of things as alternates. Now, you can over-alternate it. If we make it, we can make it too complicated, it's going to scare bidders off. We don't want that, right? We want to keep it. We want to keep the interest high. We want good numbers, and we want lots of coverage. That's how we get good pricing. So, but that's one that we could consider. It's a little bit complicated, but it's not completely unreasonable. It's possible. Okay. So if that was something you guys.
I have time.
You have time, a little bit.
Last thing over here, you're throwing these lanes over here by the softball field.
Correct.
Your track
facilities. I mean, how does that line up with? I mean, the new softball, if the bond were to approve, I mean, are we just going to move that?
He had the original site plan, so it all works, right?
Correct.
That original picture you saw in September, I think had those moved, didn't it?
That's correct. Yeah, we would leave them there, and the softball essentially would shift kind of up northeast, and the baseball would shift too. There would be a fire lane that comes out with a concession, restrooms there, and a fire loop that services both of those. The seating areas.
So we're not building things we're going to tear down.
No, sir.
Real quick. Okay.
Yeah.
Correct.
I've been clear with the team on that. We're on it.
We've done plenty of that.
So the one thing that as I mentioned, we've got we'll be going through the town approvals. We're going to be meeting with them later this week, and going to have some dialogue around if there's anything we can do to kind of streamline the process. But just there's a few things with regard to the site development and screening and those type of things that we're working through right now. But that could we're obviously wanting to make sure that we do the thing that's the best for you guys, and it's going to be a long-term, cost appropriate and time appropriate solution. And I'm sure they'll work with us. So this is the press box. Know that we've worked with the administration on locating who is where. I know this pointer won't work, but what you see working on the first floor, that what you see at the bottom is the elevator lobby. Is this the next over is the mezzanine? Is essentially the mechanical mezzanine. The next floor up is the habitable floor, first habitable floor, and we have home and visitors coaches and radio, clock. And video in our last meeting moved upstairs and traded for the media scouts on that level. And then on the top level, you've got your hospitality, you've got your film deck, and you've got kind of a flex area where we think that the visiting team would be doing their streaming from. This is the floor plan of the indoor athletic on our left, and a typical of the restroom area and concessions on the right. The green is the concessions. You can see the number of toilets is quite large, and that's just the result of the assembly space and the number of occupants potentially for the stadium. On the left, we've got the 65 yards under roof. We've got the 2 spiral staircases I mentioned that lead to the video platforms, and then a fairly simple locker room and storage and restrooms with mechanical electrical spaces. And this is just a snapshot of the elevation here. That's just what the materials called out. This is what we plan to submit to the city here at the end of the month. The town, and this will get our site plan started under review. And we're going to work with them on then moving to building permitting as soon as we can after that. So one of the things that I've heard from you guys is making sure that the experience is top notch. And one of the things that we've looked to do that with is the potential for the video board. As you can imagine with the video board, we've got tons of different options. The one that I like particularly, and I think could be applicable here, and also happens to be by a company called GoVision, who is a local company, is that up in the upper right corner. It's actually across all of the top options there are all Crowley. And so that video board right there is somewhere in the neighborhood of 1.2, 1.3 million in today's dollars, is what I'm hearing from the contractor. It's about 60 feet wide, so it makes a statement. But that is kind of what we're looking at. Again, we want to make sure we're providing you guys the best bang for your buck, and that it's something that you guys feel is a cost-effective and appropriate solution, but also has all of the ability to do the things that engages the kiddos who are engaged in the production of the video stuff. So. This is what we're looking. A couple other options. You've got Denton's down on the bottom here. They put theirs behind the visitor, which we're not talking about doing here.
And that was due to due to 380, wasn't it? Was that not because is that Braswell?
That is Braswell. I mean, I think it was
because they've got one in the corner over here on the
they
home
do.
side as
They
well.
have they've had to do two, and my thought was in this case, let's put it all into one and everybody use it, right? Versus having the one on this case that the home looks at and then having a separate one for visitors, which is what they did there, and that may have been related to 380. You may be absolutely right there.
That's what I've heard is that it had to do with they could not put it in the end zone because of 380.
That makes some sense. So, and then there's two other smaller examples there, just to kind of show you an example of what might be also perfectly viable. The good news about the video board says today is it's all an image, right? And so you divide the image up and decide which parts you want to have the score on, which parts you want to have tickers or advertising or anything else that might go on there, and it can change. Score a touchdown and the whole thing lights up. And then it goes back to a 2/3, 1/3, or however you designate the split to be, and you've got flexibility with how that allocates. Versus the old days when it was all hard. It was a static image. It didn't move. Any questions on that?
Yeah, the track that goes. We have a track that goes around the field, so this board's going to be, if it's going to be at the end, it's going to be further back and removed from the stands.
Correct. So that rectangle down towards the south of the page there is what we're showing as the location.
Which lends itself, you better spend the money on a big nice screen, because I've been in these stadiums where you got that little screen, you can't even really see it. It's not very usable.
Yeah.
And so it really does. I mean, we have to stay in budget on this Proposition B or C or whatever it is. I really I'm gonna make my closing pitch on, spend the money on the board. I mean, let's get the technology right, let's get the experience right, and if the consequence of that is we have sellouts, and people are going, man, I can't get a ticket to the football game, that's kind of a good problem.
Sure.
That's not a problem, that's a good problem. And we'll fix that later, or fix that when we can, but sellouts are not a bad thing. Charities make a lot of money off selling season tickets.
Based on what the experts tell me, you're going to want at least a 40-foot wide board there, and I would lean towards the 60 if it's something that we could make happen.
And so much of the branding can be done in the lights and the video
Absolutely.
board without permanently branding things as well.
The other piece is and you saw in that example that there were 2 brick columns on either side. I'm going to say let's do as little structure as we can and put the money, instead of into brick and stone around it, let's put it all into the screen and let the screen be a little utilitarian on the backside. But nobody's going to see that anyhow, generally speaking. Sure. And let's put it into the image, which is what everyone's going to see. And so that's what our goal would be.
And Go Vision will be a good partner. Local business, been around a long time.
We know a guy.
Okay, and just these are some exterior shots taken out of the model, so kind of renderings of what you could expect with materials here. So this is your indoor athletic, and you can see the locker room little piece to the side there that I referenced. This is a shot kind of from the D looking down to the potential scoreboard there, and the press box and stands of the home side. You'll notice the cross concourse there. We've got some low seating and then the high seating. You remember last time we talked a lot about the rake of the seating, and so one of the things I want to make sure that I mention is, at one point we were looking at maybe doing a even steeper rake. Right now, what we're proposing is basically doing a 16-inch separation, 16-inch vertical, versus a 21, which at one point we were looking at. I think a 16-inch is going to get you what you need from the sight lines, but it's not going to be arduous for somebody who is elderly to get up to the top row, say. It's a good mix. It's a little bit steeper than maybe what some do, but there's Eagle Mountain Saginaw has a good example. If you'd like to look at one, we can arrange to get you guy out there, because it's something I want you guys to be comfortable with.
One of the keys that I've recognized is the width between these. Where were we at? Lake Dallas, and you couldn't have people sitting in rows apart. I mean, it's just your knees are in their back and stuff.
I hate that.
And so I would hate to have something built at high dollar and have that minimal distance.
So what we've got is a deeper run between your seats, okay, and so you've got more knee room, and then we've got a little bit of a steeper slope than your current. So your current stadium is fairly shallow. It's very shallow and it's very narrow. It's very tight. Okay, so what we're providing is significantly more on both directions, and that's going to improve your sight lines, and it's going to be a lot more comfortable, and that's the goal.
Good.
But not as steep as Crowley's.
But not as steep as Crowley's. So when we were looking at that 21-inch rake, it's pretty steep, and it's great for sight lines, but it can be problematic taking 3 steps between seats. So. This is, again, kind of the last image here, but this is a little bit of a higher shot of that same area of the entry. You'll see the concourse across, and then the buildings with the existing field house and the high school in the distance.
By the way, thank you for these images. That really helps.
Absolutely.
It's very nice.
Any questions?
Yeah, it does.
What's estimated
Thank you,
opening on this thing?
We're shooting for August of 25 now. I will say we've got some, that's blowing and going, and that's one of the reasons why we're going to be meeting with the town to really talk about if there's anything we can do to streamline that process. We've got a submission going in for the site submission at the end of the month, as I mentioned. We'll be ready shortly thereafter to have drawings, but currently they don't review things concurrently. You got to get one permit and then the next, and so we'll see what we can do to sweet talk. Maybe there's an opportunity for some overlap there, or we want to make sure we get all of their needs met so that there's not questions as we're making the submissions.
Later this week, don't we?
Yes. Yep. Thursday.
Okay.
And the same with the IEC?
So, and we will be essentially, for our purposes, they're married. So we're going to bid them together, so we have the economy of scale of the total package versus separating them out. So we're bidding them as one big project, and then we'll break them out financially for y'all's purposes, so knowing that they're 2 bond props. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good evening, Keith. Good, how are you?
So this evening, I'm going to be giving you an update of the middle school number 1 design process. I believe you've seen this image before, the entry into the school. Just kind of, it does reflect the design of other similar projects in the district with the stone, brick, and some exposed structure that we have. First, I'll be touching on the site, the floor plans, and then some interior renderings for you this evening. Site plan is directly off of 407 here. The school is set to the north of the site with the fields fronting 407. We have our practice middle school field with track, also an additional practice field and the 8 tennis courts. We also then have the front of the school facing 407 but set back, so your parent drop-off would be to the south and looping back in front, with the bus drop-off to the north of the facility.
So before you go any further, I want to talk about that for just a moment. So what he's referring to here is our request and recommendation is that our buses come in and out of Postmaster Road up here off the north. We are in the process with the town currently. The P&Z met a couple of weeks ago, and the SUP was approved through P&Z, but the site plan was tabled due to this Postmaster situation. They've got community members that do not want us connecting and using any of Postmaster for our facility. They want to only allow that for emergency vehicles. We are very concerned about bringing our buses in and out on 407. If we don't have access off of Postmaster for our 14 buses that come in the morning and 14 in the afternoon, we will have all parents, all staff, and all buses trying to use the same entrance and exit. So we go back to the town, I believe, on Monday for a council meeting. They're going to talk about the SUP, possibly with a condition with this Postmaster, but we've got to go back to P&Z on the February 7th as a team to address the other variances and that Postmaster Road. So we are kind of in a holding place right now with that process, so I just wanted to be clear on that.
And this is where it's important, I think, for the community to understand what's going on at town level with the school. And so we know how important it is, especially with traffic and kids running around after school, that the town is telling us to run buses through where kids are getting picked up. And if there was an emergent situation at the school where there's evacuation, imagine all cars and buses and kids going out one road. And so, you know, we'll be there as a district representing our reasonable ask for being able to utilize Postmaster, but it really calling on the community to be there as well, because it is a potential traffic safety issue if we don't have what's reasonable and typical access to a school site.
Well, and just to expand upon that, I mean, you design schools all over Texas, North Texas, and in communities all over the place, and bus traffic in and out of those schools are using residential streets all the time, right?
That is correct.
In fact, we know right here in Argyle that Harpool serves the existing middle school and serves the high school, and it goes into your neighborhood, right? I mean, I've never had a complaint or anything about
Cook Street.
Yeah, Cook Street has the bus barn on it, and it goes into 5T Ranch, where I believe, I hadn't had anybody complain about it. West is on Old Justin in Harvest. I hadn't had anybody complain about it. And south is over here is the Denton Creek, and I hadn't had any. I mean, those are all residential streets. I hadn't had anybody complain about the bus traffic. I don't know, and so I hope the town, with more information, is able to understand that this bus traffic is conducive to these residential streets and have served these residential areas very, very well. And there's no reason to restrict that type of access.
Or increase the probability of safety.
Increase the probability. And also, I mean, this school is going to, these tennis courts, those 2 fields, that cafeteria, those auditoriums, they serve this community throughout the week, because our town doesn't have a lot of parks. They serve in terms of churches in our community. So I think this is, this is on 407. It's near 35. It seems like a well-situated place. I don't know why Postmaster would be such a challenge from an access standpoint.
Right, and just limiting it to buses.
Well, I think too, we obviously all agree with the safety concern and the possible safety situations that it creates unnecessarily. But Josh, you bring up a really good point too, right? Think about the school facilities. If the school district didn't make their facilities available to the town and the organizations within this town, the town hasn't done it.
There'd be no basketball courts.
In fact, the only park the town
There'd be
has,
no park.
the only park the town has, the school district gave them a 25-year free lease upon. So we've done our part. We're trying to bring more activities and more space to help, support the youth outside of school, and we're getting stonewalled. So it's very disheartening
And this is the delay in the projects that Jeff
Yeah,
speaks
this is
to.
why we went from 30 months to 3.5 years.
Right. And our community is very willing to get involved, and this is a time that we need them to get involved.
Yes,
We
absolutely.
need them to be at the council meeting
So
or the
Monday night?
workshop, I believe, on Monday, and express their opinion.
P&Z on February 7th. Argyle ISD is 35 square miles. We have 5 municipalities. We serve a lot of communities, and our campuses are going to be in each of these communities. So a community in the town of Argyle is going to serve all of our students. And that's hard for some people to understand.
Sorry, Keith.
So,
No problem.
Please proceed.
The discussion is good. I enjoy
Please
it.
proceed.
Also, as we've discussed before, we are leaving space to the west of the campus that is for the opportunity for elementary facility if needed here. That has been future planned and laid out with the drives and parking.
So when you said west of it, not north of it, so you're saying that
West of the campus, so the green space.
So this is where the elementary school would.
Right over here, yes.
That is
Correct.
It would have shared drives and parking
Yeah, we
to
have a site
the facility. So that's one consideration we took in the design was making sure that we would be able to accommodate that flow for both campuses in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Overall floor plans, we will start with the first floor plan. Oh, jumped on me. We have the front entry directly on the south of the page here, with the red is all the administration. If you follow that up, it's your multi-use spaces, library in the light green, with the cafeteria to the north and kitchen directly to the north. To the right is all the academic wings. That's the only 2-story portion of the building. It is all the combination of your core curriculum, also your art rooms, science rooms, and your special education on the first floor right adjacent to the admin. If to the left of the screen in the orange is athletics, your locker rooms, and 2 gymnasiums. And to the north is the fine arts with your band hall, band hall, percussion, choir, and also your theater arts right behind the stage. This is the second floor plan, all academic, all very uniform classrooms, gives maximum flexibility for the campus to be able to use those spaces as they need. Science rooms are also on the right there. You see the larger spaces that we have. Next, we'll move into some interior renderings. So these are the spaces that you've on the inside with some of the materials. This is that front admin space. So right when you walk in, this is where you can see to the left, that's that security window. So you have that secure vestibule. This would be the spaces that greet you when you go into the admin space. Right in front of that, that's that main corridor. So the admin's to the left, the classrooms are to the right, with the second level to the right. Straight down that corridor is the library and the cafeteria on your left. So this is the main spine and circulation of this campus. In the academic wing, that was the loop on the right, the 2-story, There are some breakout spaces very similar to what we have at the high school now. These are right outside the classrooms and adjacent to the courtyard. These are just quick little breakout spaces that we're providing for the students. Here's a typical classroom with the main teaching space to the front, very flexible for the teachers and the students. The library space that we mentioned right behind the admin, this is the center of the school. It is accessible right that main corridor and also right across from the courtyard space. A couple shots of that. You can see the windows there looking out to the courtyard space of the academics of the library. Right adjacent to it is the cafeteria space. The library is right behind that wall on the left. This is also a cafetorium, so we have the stage that has the fine arts right behind it. Real quick shot of the serving line right off the cafeteria. 4 serving lines for the flexibility of the different types of food services that we're providing.
So this part's basically like what we have at the high school.
It's very similar. It has a lot of similar attributes that you have. One thing as we move into the fine arts, and it was mentioned before about the logos for the school. You see, we haven't provided a lot of specific mascot logos. The only places that we're proposing that is going to be in the gymnasium. One aspect we've been asked to look at is using something that could be changed out very easily. We're proposing this as not paint. It's actually a decal type of that can be easily swapped out if it ever needed to be in the future. So we're really limiting our logos to just the gymnasium spaces. Also, we're limiting the graphics on the floor as well to keep max flexibility in the future. So this would be one of the gymnasium 1. You'd also have a gymnasium 2, very similar amenities in both. We actually just have less graphics in this one as the other. As you move through some of the other spaces, this is the weight room space. Obviously does not have the weight room equipment in there, but this is the general space that would open out directly to the fields to the south. Also, just a quick example of one of the locker room spaces. Fine arts, this is the band hall with the acoustics. Again, the seating's not shown because it could be max flexibility in the space. Also the ensemble space right adjacent, and the percussion space all grouped together, very similar style.
Are there gonna be rooms for like instrument storage and
Yes.
uniforms? Kind of like what we have at the current high school?
Yes,
They won't
they're
need
separate spaces.
They won't need uniforms, right? It's just not
Not
instruments,
uniforms.
right? But no uniforms.
There's instrument and then
They
the
have dress, they have concerts.
Yes, I guess some concert, but not as far as the.
Yeah, it's not the marching band.
Right.
those are right off of each of these spaces. They're attached. Also, the practice rooms are attached to each of the spaces, so max supervision from staff within
Then
the
offices
space.
for the staff.
All adjacent. And that is the renderings. Any other questions or anything I need to circle back on?
I'm assuming you guys are in a lot of communications with Mr. Gibson.
We are, yes.
I
We've had
think he's gonna be instrumental, because he's
multiple
run
meetings.
both buildings.
Yeah, he's
and
been
he-
involved.
We've had a number of meetings with them, also with athletics and fine arts, and kept the administration staff in a lot of these meetings as well. So what we do is we bring them the plans, they give their comments, we make the changes, we come back with them with the updates to get additional comments.
Okay.
Thank you, Keith.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I've got the Jane Rustman update for you tonight. And I will try to always remember to call it that, not elementary 4. When I talk to the contractor, I have to say elementary 4 because they don't know it by anything else. So I have to, it's kind of like being bilingual. And sometimes I go into the other one when I shouldn't. So our major activities that we have ongoing is still steel erection. They've made it around to what we call Area D, which is the shorter classroom wing. So on the picture on the right, you see just a slab. That's what we call Area D. So they've made it over to that point with structural steel, and then the gym, which is on the right just south of that, you see the walls up and no roof on that. That steel is all on site, and as soon as they get the classroom steel up and the roof deck on, they're going to move to that and finish the structural steel for the gym. We've got exterior and interior metal stud framing going on throughout. They're right behind the steel erectors, almost pushing them along. Says building envelope here, so that kind of includes a lot of trades. That includes the waterproofing trade, includes our masonry trade, and also includes our glass and glazing trade. So all three of those are coming right behind the framer, helping to push this job, and we should be looking at probably having it almost 100% in the drive sometime in February on the track they're on. And then MEP roughing, that's going to be ongoing for a while, all the overhead ducts, the overhead sprinkler, electrical, plumbing. Here's just a couple more photos on some interior. So on the left, we're looking at the kitchen. So due to the trench drain system we have in the floor, they did leave out, so you see them going back, setting all the trench drains to grade, and then they're pouring those in place, so you can see that in progress on the left. Picture on the right, they're actually putting in the structural geofoam, which is the fill below our platform, so we'll pour concrete on top of that, so we don't have that void. It's all filled with styrofoam underneath there. Continuing with roofing still, that's why we're going to be in the drive. We're going to go ahead and leave off the final layer as they make progress, so that during construction we're not working on that final layer and then we have to come back closer to the end and start patching leaks that we've created during construction. So we're going to hold off on that final layer. Storefront installation and glass is going to be progressing a lot faster. They got I think 6 truckloads of glass last week were delivered. And then outside, they're going to start working on concrete sidewalks very soon around the site. They've already begun backfilling of topsoil outside of the site and working that in toward the building. And hopefully we'll start some irrigation in February. Here are just a couple of aerial shots. One of our Argyle number 3 South Elementary on the left, from roughly the same point in time, months into construction, that we're looking at. Argyle number 4, Jane Rustman on the right. And this is just to show you we've made a lot better progress on this school, a lot more efficient, having them build a second one now. So a lot more knowledge we have as we gain information from questions that we have building the first one. We get those in the drawing so we don't have the same questions the next time, and so on and so forth, every time we build the prototype. Here's our milestones. So building dry-in that I mentioned earlier should happen in February. We should be looking to have permanent power to the building in March. We've already got the transformer set, still waiting on the main switchgear to show up. Elevator installation will happen in April, and then we're looking to be substantially complete in August. And just an update here on our early release materials, kitchen equipment. We've been storing that for a while now. It's on hand still. I believe the last of the deliveries will be made this week. All of our mechanical units will be here in February, so we're looking at flying those up on the roof toward the end of February right now. And then our electrical switch gear has always been March, but we've actually been able to improve that, and so we should be receiving that main switchboard in another 2 weeks. So that's how we're going to be able to get the permanent power on to that building in March. And of course, once we do that, we can have heat, we can have air. That will not slow down our finishing process then with our tape and bed and paint and flooring. So having that ability just allows the rest of the project to go much faster and smoother without delays. And we have scheduled furniture delivery for the 1st of July.
Good deal. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the next elementary.
The next elementary.
Oh, really?
This is just a one-slide report. Wanted to pass on some information. to you. This would be regarding elementary school number 5. So I know when we came along with the GMP on elementary 4, that, caused a lot of us to hit the floor when we saw the price on that. And we started asking, what are we going to do on the next one? And there were some conversations that we're still having about, is it time to, redesign this school and come up with a different design? So I kind of looked at both using our prototype and the time frame of that versus if we do a redesign and the time frame of that, what this could look like. So I just kind of did a side by side to give you this information, kind of seeking some input and some direction. I think as far as administration, myself, we feel like the prototype design based on numbers alone is the direction to go, but I wanted to present this information. So on the left, we have our prototype design. Column on the right would be a redesign. Of course, there's a lot of assumption I had to make here, and I tried to note all of those assumptions so you could see where that comes into play. So the prototype design, that's simply based on our cost, our GMP that we had for elementary 4. That's a known cost that we had last June. And then I turned that into a square foot price to come up with this base cost for a redesign. And I also based that with an assumption that we would reduce it by 10,000 square feet. Because if we're not shaving square footage, we're not really going to save money. The money's going to be in the square footage, not in the finishes. So that's how I got those two base numbers. Of course, they've been inflated using that 0.75% a month that we used when building the bond in those numbers. So I used the same assumption that they had. And assuming we go with a prototype design, we could probably have that ready to go as early as April, out to bid. Because really all we've got to do is design a site. And we've designed a large portion of that site already with the middle school since we would be sharing. That's another assumption. It's based on that location, not a new location. The redesign, we're looking at a year plus out by the time we get it designed and far enough along with town approvals to hopefully know that we're not going to have any surprises come from these town reviews. They all come back with comments that always adds and costs of the project with changes that we have to make. So we don't want to do it too soon. Because then we run the risk of having the large surprise. So it's kind of balancing that. So I think we're looking at about March would be the earliest we'd be able to bid a new design.
So Jeff, you're saying basically this slide says it's going to be about $1 million more to redesign it, and it's going to take longer.
That's in a nutshell.
I mean, the reason we asked you to even look at this was the assumption that at $400 a square foot, 10,000 square foot, you're going to save a substantial amount of money. Somehow that's not coming to fruition, and it's actually getting eaten by design fees, which we've already paid Corrigan how much for the design of this prototype?
I believe it's 1.314, I believe is the number.
So,
$1.3 million.
Okay, $1.3 million, and then, but to actually change the prototype?
To change it would be more. And again, I had to make that assumption, 5% fee. So that's the difference in cost there. And then of course, just to speak to what's causing them to not be as effective with a redesign is we had some combination pricing we got with our CM at risk.
But even if Corrigan agreed to do it for free, it's the same cost but takes longer, or still a little bit more but takes longer.
So I mean, I would definitely be a proponent of sticking with a prototype design, having that thing, get it moving so we can finish it as soon as possible, which, is likely to be before we need to occupy it. But it gives us that flexibility if we need to occupy it early.
One of our efficiencies is time.
Yes.
That is an efficiency. And of course, with the third iteration of the same school, I expect Pogue to be able to build it better and faster. We should see efficiencies in subcontractors by building middle school and elementary at the same time. So a concrete sub, for instance, he could pour the slabs for the middle school and then roll right into the elementary school. There's no demobilization, remobilization. So we should see some efficiencies just in the bidding on the subcontractors. And, I tried to estimate what I think it could be. I really think it will be more than that, but I didn't want to, say it's $3 million just to artificially say I'm going to bring this school in way cheaper than the other one.
No,
but I feel $500,000 is reasonable to expect just in savings on subcontractor prices.
And I agree with this, and it's easier to do the prototypes, but this is therapeutic for me.
Go for
And
it
that we're
then.
always told square foot is $400 a square foot, $450 a square foot. And it doesn't matter where you're building it, it's that price per square foot. And so we're cutting off 10,000. We would assume we would save 4 to 4.5 million, and this is showing 800,000.
Right.
So,
and we're fighting inflation. That's another reason we're
well,
not recognizing
yeah,
that much
At
savings.
some point.
So,
Anyway, that's therapeutic for me, just the lunacy about some of these quotes.
wait till 7 years from now when I'm up here asking for 91 million.
We call that catharsis.
So that's all. There's no other slides. So just wanted to present that and seek
So-
any input, guidance, direction,
$1 million
thoughts.
slide.
So could you explain to me the loss of the combination school CMAR pricing? I think I understand it, but.
Yes, so
Where that
when
number's
we
coming from?
issued that RFQ, we based it on a middle school and an elementary school, but we asked them to respond a price to do only the middle, a price to do only the elementary, and then give us a combination if we were to award both to the same CM.
To do
And so
concurrently.
what I
Right.
did to get that number is I went back and looked at what is the current bid we accepted for the middle school, because we're locked in with that one. So then I went back and looked at, well, who was the lowest bid on the elementary if I had done these separately? And then I compared that with what Pogue had proposed to do them as a combination, and that's how I arrived at that delta. Again, that's not necessarily the exact number, but that was the best way I could estimate what it might be.
And so we would lose that because of the time factor?
We would lose that because of no longer having that overlap in construction and the potential that we're gonna, not go forward with Pogue if we redesign, but issue a new RFQ to seek a new CM. That's potential. I mean, I didn't want to assume we would just stick with Pogue just because, but timing-wise, they based it on the information we gave them, and now that will change with the redesign because of the time.
So, because I know we've talked about thinking about changing the design in general, so the fact that this is a combined site makes that a little bit more difficult to do right now, that maybe when we have a single site in the future, that's something we can look at.
That was our
Absolutely, and
recommendation.
again,
Okay.
with having more time on our side at that point, if, proactively getting those sites earlier and allowing ourselves more time to look into those things. But a site could also dictate a new design.
True.
Just like the bidder property we've looked at a little bit. I don't think the prototype design really fits on that. That would need to be a new design if we went that direction.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Okay.
Okay.
It's your turn.
Okay, so most of what I would have said has been said tonight legislatively and with the bond group. So I am just going to skip that portion. But I do have a few students I want to celebrate under the superintendent's report tonight. Caleb Leonard is one of our Argyle High School students, and he, for the third year in a row, advanced to the final round of the state debate contest and debated at the state capitol, I believe just recently, as in maybe this past weekend. But after 8 hours of debating, Caleb ended up placing 13th in the state. So great opportunity for Caleb. He represented Argyle High School very well. Very proud of him. His team, Grant Paris, Addison High, Jack Dillon, Leah Chaw, and worked with Caleb, but they helped him write 150 pages of speeches for the state meet. So appreciate them. Congratulations, Caleb. We also have a high school student, Anton Mayanga's art is going to be showcased at the Bob Bullock Museum. It was part of actually Youth Art Month, so congratulations there, Anton, for representing us. And then I want to celebrate our band students who showcased their talents at TMA at All-State Band. Just so you know, we had a record 16 students qualify for audition and the most 5A students that did qualify for state. So congratulations to our students, Ava Sankey, Rayan Hazley, Ethan Duncan, Aiden Nam, Pascal Matayo, Pierce Lowe, Griffin St. James was tenor 1, made All-State Choir. So congratulations to those students. They worked very hard, and I wanted to make sure we recognize them. We've got a lot going on with athletics, a lot of winter sports. Our boys and girls are in first, boys are tied for first, and then soccer's underway, about to start district. Softball and baseball are kicking off. So a lot going on, and we're very excited for our students and their accomplishments. And then as far as the 6th grade center water leak, our team, I just want to commend Tommy Ledford in our operations department, Liz Stewart, and everyone else in operations, Angel, the whole team. They have worked nonstop in the weather the last several days trying to get this leak identified. Tommy identified the leak from a water bill that was just out of control. And so thank you, Tommy, for identifying that and working hard with your team to get that rectified. CR Plumbing has been on top of it as well, but we should have our students back in that building on Thursday. So we will make an official announcement tomorrow, but it looks like we're going to be back in, and they have identified. They busted up some concrete, but they were able to get to the bottom of it. So thank you, Tommy. And then the last thing, just a reminder, the students have a February 16th and 19th, which is right before our next meeting. Our students are out for a 4-day weekend. And our February regular meeting is the 20th, not a Monday, the 19th, but Tuesday the 20th.
All right.
On the league, I just want to say how appreciative I am of how quickly you all pivoted and got the students a place to learn.
Yes, absolutely.
So thank you for doing that.
And just on that note, both principals at those campuses were fabulous. I know when Ms. Stewart called them, they just said, okay, we'll make it happen. So they did a great job. It was a team effort, teachers, everyone, not one complaint from them. It was just like, let's go. So I appreciate that attitude.
Yeah.
That's why I'm in Argyle. That's why I wanted to be here. All right, I think we have 2 information only items, I believe. Okay.
Okay, this is, it's titled Purchase of Band Instruments. I believe it's on your agenda as purchases over $50,000. As you remember with board policy CH local, any purchase over the $50,000 limit, whether it was budgeted or not, has to come to the board for approval. This one was budgeted. It was planned for in our budget discussions and our approved budget. It's the band instruments, and as we get bigger, the cost of band instruments, because we require more and more as that band program grows, gets larger and larger every year. We're asking for a maximum not to exceed of $147,000. That is the amount that's budgeted in there. Mr. Bird has worked on getting quotes for the individual instruments that he believes that they will need for the growth next year, and he's worked on getting quotes on that. I believe there's a couple of quotes that he may have to update, but we're still looking at the $147,000 maximum not to exceed, and it'll come back to you next month as an approval item and not just information. Are there questions on there? I mean, this includes a wide range of instruments, all the way from percussion to every type of marching horn that they have, and then the larger dollar amount instruments that the school district typically purchases.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, the next one is another information item, and we're talking about elementary playground swings. So in our discussions over the last year, it's been brought to our attention that we have some differences at our elementaries in what playground swings are available. And so Jeff Cohen has worked with us on getting some quotes and some estimates and some design layouts of what could fit on our elementaries as far as swings. So Hilltop campus, it includes swings but not adaptive swings. West doesn't have any swings. So when we built that campus, there were no swings added to that playground. When we built South, we went back to including swings and adaptive swings. And the adaptive swings are for our special needs students. And so we would like to set a standard at all of our elementaries and have them all the same. And so we would use South as that example. And we would like to come back and add swings and adaptive swings at West and add an adaptive swing at Hilltop. And then moving forward with Elementary 4 and all others, they would have the same layout as what we have, what we're suggesting to move to currently here. In the 22 bond, there was an item for Hilltop Playground. That item has been completed. We have $146,386 remaining in that item. We would suggest using those dollars towards this project. The cost of this project is estimated at $185,000, so there's a little bit of difference there, and we would suggest unallocated interest earnings from the 22 bond to fill in the gap. And if you look at, if you can scroll down to the next page, this is the layout. And again, this is not where it would be placed or anything else. We're just looking at the type of swing here. This is what would happen at Hilltop. And then if you scroll down to the next one, it's got a sample of what would be placed at West. So do you have any questions on the type of swings and what we're wanting to move towards at our elementaries?
I'm just tickled pink that this is happening,
Yes.
because this has needed to happen for a while.
And we've heard from
I'd
our
agree.
teachers that we've needed our adaptive swings, and we've heard from some of our parents of our students with special needs. So it is exciting to be able to bring something to you.
Yeah, I think that's true. We hear, when you take us on those boardwalks and we've been on those campuses, this has been a consistent, as it relates to West in particular.
Yep.
And so I'm glad to see that that's something we're gonna try to work in.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, on action items, we're going to talk about our bus purchase. We looked at this last month. It's the same exact recommendation it wasn't a recommendation last month, it was information last month. Nothing has changed, but I would be happy to answer any questions or any discussion on this that you might have.
I'll entertain a motion to approve action item 12A as presented.
Moved.
Dr. McDade, motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mrs. Arthur, second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next two action items are also items that were brought to you for information in December. The first one is the calendar. There was one change made from what was presented in December that was communicated to our DLT and also to the board. It's a flip-flop of a bad weather day and a teacher work day. The reason for that change is that the bad weather day was occurring in February, which doesn't give as much time for families to make plans if they do need to attend school. So it doesn't change anything for our families or students if that bad weather day is indeed a holiday. It just changes the day, just changes those two dates, but it doesn't change anything in the overall picture. There were no other changes. You have any questions on the calendar?
I'll entertain a motion to approve action item 12B as presented.
Motion to approve.
All right, Mr. Western, motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Matthew Slayton with a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you.
The next item is the new classes proposed for the middle school and high school. The only thing that was added to this is the budgetary impact. So if all the classes here are offered and make, as in students sign up for them and we would need additional teachers, we would bring that to you with the anticipated funding that it would generate depending on the level of CTL class that it is, and then how that would affect our overall cost for our budget.
So is it possible that if those classes do make, let's say those two particular, if there are two teachers, would the money that we get for the CTE, the 1.1, whatever, help to cover those salaries and possibly we wouldn't have to?
Yes, that would be the goal, and that's what I would bring to you if we do bring an ask for more teachers, that would come along with it.
Okay.
And this seems somewhat inconsistent with the efficiencies and that we're about to go on, but it actually, it's
This is
beneficial.
self-funded, yes, correct, because we're trying to generate the CTE funding that's available by offering those, yes, completing those pathways, completing this.
Just want to make sure that's clear.
Absolutely.
Any other questions, comments?
What's a minimum that you look for in these classes?
I'd say if it was, generally speaking, we're looking for at least 15 students for a class to make. But what we'll have to do is if we have one of these classes makes it CTE, Ms. Stewart and I will sit down together and we'll look at how much funding it is for that class and how many students it would take and kind of balance those two things. And so it's not going to be the same for every class, but we have to also think about not all of those classes are going to make this year. And it's hard to predict which ones our students will have interest in, but we want them to be able to be forward thinking, and maybe I can't fit in my schedule next year, but I love this pathway and I'm looking forward to taking it in a future year.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve action item 12C as presented.
So moved.
Mr. Hawksworth, motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Westrom, second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
How do you know on that?
Did you vote, Mr.
We'll have
Westrom?
it, it's part of their academic planning guides, so they'll be able to go and then they can put them in there, and if they don't have enough students, then
So when do you know?
after they go through the process this spring, that's what they'll be doing the next couple months.
Got it, okay.
I just want to make sure it did.
Oh, order of election.
Well, I didn't
Oh,
hear it. Did,
sorry.
Did you vote? I just want
Yes,
to make sure.
yes, I voted.
Okay. All right. I wasn't sure. All right. Thank you.
Okay, so we have an order of election. Mr. Slayton, do you want to take this, or do you want me to? This is for the board to approve the order of election for the May 4th trustee election. Basically, it's just stating the dates. First day to file is actually tomorrow, January 17th. Ballot shall be filed by February 16th if your name is to be on the ballot for applicants. And then it's got the information about early voting, Denton County elections, etc. And for this is required for the board to approve.
All right. I'll entertain a motion to approve action item 12B as presented.
Motion to approve.
All right. Mr. Western, motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mrs. Arthur, second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
I have policy 122 and local updates for approval this month. Last month was information only. Any questions from last month to now?
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Daniel? All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve action item 12E as presented.
Motion to approve.
All right, Mr. Hawksworth, motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Western with a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. We are going to adjourn to executive session. When we come back, there will be no other action items discussed. The time is 8:37 p.m. Thank you all for being here.